Welcome to the Global History Channel.
Check out Claude Monet's studio and garden at Giverny from 1900 to the 1920s. Man, these photos are pure magic. His water lilies, the colors, the vibes of the workspace. It's like stepping right into the artist's mind. You can almost hear the brush strokes if you look close enough. Seriously, it's the kind of place that makes you want to grab a paintbrush yourself. Then we got Lynda Carter as the original Wonder Woman. The 1970s never looked so iconic. Lynda had beauty, charm, and strength all wrapped up in one. And these pics show her owning that superhero vibe. I mean, can you even imagine trying to fill those boots today? Legendary. Next, brace yourself for some laugh-out-loud moments with curious and hilarious early 20th century feminine hygiene ads. Yeah, people really thought that awkward phrasing and wild promises were gonna sell products. The 1900s were wild, and these ads are proof that marketing used to be way more, let's say, creative. Now let's stroll through American stores and shops from the early 20th century. These pics are like a time machine. Old-school general stores, elegant department shops, and streets buzzing with life. It's a peek at the roots of shopping before Amazon crushed everything. Nostalgia hits hard, right? Speaking of blast from the past vibes, remember photomat booths of the 1980s? Drive-through photo processing was the ultimate convenience. Drop your film, grab a soda, boom, pictures in a few days. These kiosks were everywhere, and these old pics capture that suburban charm perfectly. If you're feeling retro, 1950s bathroom designs are next. Pastel tiles, chrome fixtures, playful colors. It's like every bathroom doubled as a mini art exhibit. The era balanced function and fun, and trust me, these photos will make you want to redo your whole bathroom. Then we jet off to Mai Tho, Vietnam in 1969, captured by an American soldier. These color shots aren't just war photos, they're vibrant street life, riverside scenes, and real human moments amidst chaos. It's raw, beautiful, and kinda heartbreaking all at once. And you gotta peep the unisex fashion craze of the early 1970s. Bold prints, matching outfits for everyone, flares everywhere. It was all about equality and breaking fashion rules. Looking back, it was fun, playful, and a little wild. And these pics nail that vibe. If you're into brand history, check out the original Michelin Man. Yep, he used to be terrifying. Creepy stacked tires, but strangely memorable. These old photos are part funny, part scary, and 100% iconic for one of the world's most famous mascots. Now let's slow it down with high school typing classes from the 50s to 70s. Rows of students, typewriters clacking away, perfect posture. This was serious business back then. It's wild to think typing was once a skill you needed for survival in the office world. All right, humor time. Regrettable, 1980s fashion. Shoulder pads, neon chaos, mullets for days. These pics are both terrifying and hilarious. You gotta laugh, but also appreciate the fearless experimentation of the era. No shame, all style. Speaking of high school, here's what it looked like in the 1970s. Bell-bottoms, colorful hair, and goofy smiles. It's pure teenage energy frozen in time. The photos just scream nostalgia, and you can almost hear the classic rock playing in the background. Ever wondered about icemen delivering blocks of ice? Yeah, this was a real job. These vintage pics show dudes hauling massive ice blocks through neighborhoods before fridges were a thing. Respect to them, because that's some serious arm workout right there. And who remembers Beanie Babies in the 1990s? These tiny stuffed animals caused a global frenzy. Collecting, trading, hoarding. They were like Pokemon, but cuter. These pics capture the chaos and cuteness all at once. Childhood nostalgia, overload. Jump back a few decades to 1940s fashion. Tailored suits, elegant dresses, hats, gloves, glamour and practicality all in one. The attention to detail was insane, and these photos preserve the era's iconic blend of style and function. Now let's talk about 1960s miniskirts. Bold, rebellious, and totally game-changing. Women challenged norms, flaunted confidence, and brought a whole new energy to fashion. These photos capture that fearless vibe perfectly, and you can almost hear the groovy tunes of the decade in the background. Next up, first day of school from the past century. Neat clothes, big smiles, tiny backpacks, and teachers looking serious but proud. These shots are pure nostalgia, showing how education, fashion, and traditions evolved over decades. Hollywood glitz hits next with Sharon Tate in the 1960s. Candid, glamorous, and full of life, these photos remind us of her beauty and charm before tragedy struck. You can feel her energy, her laughter, and the brightness she brought to the screen. Picnic vibes incoming. Early and mid-20th century picnics show families, friends, and fun outdoors. Baskets, blankets, and laughter captured perfectly in timeless snapshots. It's wholesome, nostalgic, and makes you want to pack a basket and hit the park right now. Finally, we wrap it up with 19th century Athens and Greece. Historic streets, iconic architecture, and everyday life frozen in time. These pics balance tradition and modernization, giving us a breathtaking window into Greece's cultural and architectural roots. Check this out. Let's kick things off with a wild one. Back in 1989, Pink Floyd pulled off this insane floating concert in Venice. Picture this, a stage literally floating on the lagoon, St. Mark's Square packed with over 200,000 fans, and the sound shaking historic buildings like crazy. Boats everywhere, tons of trash left behind, total chaos. And guess what? The city council had to resign because of the madness. Absolute legend move, but a nightmare for the city. Now, hop back to 1954 and we're peeking behind the scenes of the first Godzilla movie. Haruo Nakajima was sweating it out in this 200-pound rubber suit, stomping through tiny city sets like a full-on monster apocalypse. Add creative lighting, smoke, slow-motion cameras, and bam! You've got the birth of a global pop culture icon. Those practical effects were insane, and seeing the crew work their magic behind the camera, next-level filmmaking. Jump to the 50s and 60s. Sugar was being sold like it was a health miracle. Ads were everywhere claiming it could help you lose weight and boost energy. Yeah, right. They had smiling families, doctors, slim women, basically making sugar look like a miracle worker. In reality, it was all smoke and mirrors, hiding the fact that sugar could lead to obesity, heart disease, and diabetes. Wild how they tricked everyone back then. Okay, check this. 1880 to 1930. Mugshots weren't just about criminal records. They told stories. Thieves, con artists, drifters, all captured in gritty detail. Photography was a new tool for cops, but these shots also give us a peek into social conditions of the time. The faces, the expressions, they're haunting, showing the raw humanity behind crime before modern forensics even existed. Now, let's talk fashion with a twist. 1949 saw the invention of the adhesive bra swimsuit. Yeah, stick-on bras for beachwear. Women were all about freedom and style, but heat, sweat, and water made these things super tricky to actually wear. Still, it was bold, experimental, and a peek into post-war fashion, experimenting with comfort and body confidence. Time travel to 100 BC to 200 AD in Rome, Egypt, where the Fayum mummy portraits blew minds. Wooden panels, vivid wax pigments, super realistic faces over mummies. These portraits merged Egyptian funerary traditions with Roman realism. Emotion, detail, personality. It's like the people are staring right at you centuries later. Total cultural mashup, and these images are hauntingly beautiful. Fast forward to 1979, and we've got the cocaine calendar. Yup, a full-on calendar celebrating coke culture. Glossy photos, cheeky references, glamorizing a seriously dangerous drug. Back then, society was casually glamorizing substance use, and this relic now feels like a bizarre time capsule from the disco era. Flip to 1972, Texas State Fair, bright colors, people tasting barbecue, chili, pecan pies, and all kinds of local goodies. Cowboy hats, carnival rides, families enjoying themselves. It was basically a big celebration of Texas pride. These photos show local life, food culture, and just how festive the state fair scene was back then. All right, let's get edgy. 1946, Rockaway Beach in New York. People getting tickets for indecent exposure. Bathing suits considered too short got you sighted right there on the sand. Fashion was evolving, but the law was strict. These photos capture the tension between changing trends and old-school modesty. Now, Northern Europe, 1890 to 1930. Rare photos of the Sami people, indigenous, nomadic, surviving the Arctic, reindeer herding, fishing, traditional clothing, tents called lavu. These images preserve a way of life shaped by harsh landscapes and cultural resilience. They're snapshots of survival, tradition, and identity, in a harsh but beautiful world. 1563 to 1591, Giuseppe Arcimboldo making portraits out of fruits, vegetables, flowers, and fish. Each piece formed a human face, blending surrealism, realism, and symbolism. Seasons, traits, elements, all creatively fused into human likenesses. Totally mind-bending, whimsical, and iconic. These paintings weren't just art. They were conversation starters, jaw-dropping examples of how creativity can bend reality. 1890, Norway, postcards showing serene fjords, wooden villages, farmers, and festivals. Romanticized, colorful, promoting tourism, and giving a glimpse into everyday life at the end of the 19th century. Nature, culture, simplicity. It's all there in stunning visuals. Imagine sending one of these postcards home and letting someone see a peaceful world far removed from urban chaos. Jump to 1966, behind the scenes of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Sergio Leone directing tense standoffs, actors in rugged costumes, Ennio Morricone's score looming large, desert landscapes, gritty sets, epic standoffs. These photos show how a Western masterpiece came to life with creativity and grit. You can almost feel the dust and tension just looking at the frames. 1920 to 1930, daredevil bikers racing in motorcycle chariots. Lightweight open-frame bikes, stunts, adrenaline, and crowds going wild. The pics show speed, danger, and early motorsport spectacle. Riders were fearless, and the early motorcycles were pure ingenuity in motion. You can almost hear the roar of engines and smell the burning rubber. 1840 to 1850, daguerreotype portraits capturing the oldest generations ever photographed. Details, clothing, facial expressions, they preserve social status, fashion, and customs. Early photography giving us a peek into lives from nearly 2 centuries ago, immortalizing people for history. Every portrait feels like the person might blink at any moment. Picasso's self-portraits, age 15 to 90. Watch the evolution from realistic teen sketches to cubist, abstract, bold masterpieces. His style shifts with his mind, emotions, and experimentation. These portraits are a lifetime of identity exploration captured on canvas. 7 decades of art, all in one visual journey, and it's insane to see how fearless he got with color and form over time. 1906, Edwardian beach fashion. Long dresses, corsets, wide hats, and men in full suits. Elegant but stifling, leisure mixed with strict social decorum. These photos show the constraints of style versus the desire for fun in public spaces. You can almost feel the heat and stiffness, but people still tried to enjoy the sand. 1920s to 1950s, drive-in restaurants. America's car culture, thriving. Classic cars, neon lights, car hops serving meals to people in vehicles. Dining and entertainment combined, reflecting convenience, socializing, and the post-war consumer boom. These spots were more than food. They were the ultimate hangout, a mix of style, speed, and social life. 1943, Esther Bubbly, capturing Greyhound bus terminals. Crowds, chaos, movement, weary travelers, all amidst wartime America. Routine moments like boarding or waiting become visual stories of energy, emotion, and human connection. You can practically hear the buses honking, the footsteps, the chatter. She made ordinary life look cinematic. 1860 to 1875, spirit photography. Ghosts captured in images with the living through clever double exposures. People were obsessed with connecting to the afterlife, but skeptics exposed many hoaxes. These photos show curiosity, fear, and fascination with the supernatural during the Victorian era. It's wild thinking people paid good money just to see a ghost in a picture. Back in the 1930s to 1950s, beauty standards were totally different. Instead of promoting weight loss, many ads encouraged women to gain weight to look curvier and healthier. These vintage ads featured slogans like, "Skinny girls are not glamour girls," and promoted tonics, milkshakes, and supplements that promised quick weight gain. It's wild to see how these old ads reflect how society's idea of beauty keeps changing over time. Moving on, these photos capture a young Mike Tyson in his rawest form during the 1980s and 1990s. Before and after, he became the youngest heavyweight champion. You see him training hard, joking around, and living fast. There's an energy in his eyes that shows both power and pain. These candid shots remind us how Tyson wasn't just a boxing legend, but also a complex, unstoppable force of his time. Then we have vintage photos from the 1890s showing Victorian burlesque dancers dressed in ornate, handcrafted costumes covered in lace, feathers and jewels. Burlesque back then was bold for its time, mixing comedy, theatre and dance with a daring twist. The images reveal how these performers challenged the era's strict social norms while turning entertainment into an art form full of attitude, elegance and rebellion. In 1971, incredible photos captured Neil, the pet lion owned by actress Tippi Hedren, and her daughter Melanie Griffith casually living with them at home. He lounged on couches, swam in the pool and even shared the bed. The pictures are wild, part Hollywood glamour, part sheer madness, capturing a surreal moment when a real lion was treated like a family pet in the name of love and adventure. These vintage ads from 1910 to 1960 reveal how marketing often exploited women's fear of being single or unattractive to secure marriage. From soap to deodorant, companies pushed products with messages like, "Don't risk losing him," or "Keep your man interested." The ads reflect a time when women's worth was tied to marriage, showing how consumer culture reinforced outdated gender roles under the guise of beauty and romance. Then there are bizarre food ads from the 1940s to 1960s that show just how strange vintage marketing could get. Picture mayo-filled Jell-O salads, hot dogs in gelatin, and absurd taglines calling them delicious family favorites. Companies like Spam, Jell-O, and Heinz went wild with odd recipes and creepy smiles. It's funny and a little gross, but these ads capture a weirdly creative era when anything modern was worth trying, no matter how terrible it looked. In the 1930s, a German stuntman named Richter took thrill-seeking to the next level by strapping rockets to his bicycle, literally. Known as the rocket bike, his wild invention blasted across racetracks and airfields, leaving fire trails and stunned crowds. It was part science experiment, part death wish. These photos capture the fearless spirit of early daredevils who risked everything just to feel the rush of speed and pure adrenaline. These candid photos from the 1930s to 1950s show Albert Einstein beyond the lab coat and equations, walking his dog, relaxing at home, and chatting with friends. You see the genius as a simple man with wild hair, a pipe in hand, and a gentle smile. These moments reveal the human side of Einstein, a man who balanced deep scientific thought with humor, warmth, and an easygoing charm. Victorian mourning jewelry from 1750 to 1900 was haunting yet beautiful, made to remember lost loved ones, often containing their actual hair. Crafted into rings, lockets, or brooches, each piece carried deep emotional meaning. During an era obsessed with death and sentimentality, wearing such jewelry was seen as a touching tribute, blending grief, art, and love into something eerily intimate and deeply personal. Finally, these photos capture Pink Floyd's legendary 1989 concert in Venice, performed on a floating stage right in front of St. Mark's Square. Over 200,000 fans packed the city, shaking the ancient foundations with rock music echoing over the canals. The chaos left Venice covered in trash and damage, sparking outrage so intense that the entire city council resigned. It remains one of the most unforgettable and controversial concerts in history. Check out these old-school album covers from the 60s to the 80s. Straight-up comedy gold. Wild poses, weird fashion, and awkward vibes all over. It's like every artist was thinking, yeah, that looks cool, but it really didn't. Pure retro chaos and so bad, you just can't stop staring. And oh man, these vintage pics from the 1910s? Animals dressed up like people. I'm talking little hats, suits, dresses, the full vibe. It's cute, hilarious, and kind of crazy that folks back then had zero chill when it came to creativity. Straight up old school weirdness that's totally adorable. Now let's talk tobacco ads from the 1920s and 30s. These are wild. They literally made smoking look like the secret to health, success, and even romance. Doctors in white coats saying cigarettes calm your nerves. Insane. Total vintage propaganda. Smooth talk, slick posters, and a whole lot of smoke being blown literally. Ever wondered how students decorated their dorm rooms back in the day? Photos from 1890 to 1950 show they were turning their spaces into total vibe zones. Fancy rugs, books everywhere, wild furniture setups, no LED lights or TikTok trends, just pure personality and creativity. Makes you wish you could chill in one of those vintage dorm hangouts, right? Speaking of style, check out these shots of June Wilkinson from the 50s and 60s. total old-school glam. She was the ultimate bombshell, owning every frame with confidence, elegance, and bold Hollywood attitude. Every photo screams pin-up energy, and honestly, she still outshines most modern influencers today. Things get even funnier with these 1860s photos showing different levels of drunkenness. From just a sip to completely gone, the expressions are priceless. No memes, no filters, just raw 19th century humor. People back then already had that same goofy party energy we still see today. And check this out. Estonian frat students from 1870 to 1910 totally rocking drag before it was even a thing. Dressing up, posing, having a blast, and bringing serious attitude and humor to the stage. Way ahead of their time, and honestly, super inspiring. Now let's get a little weird with a 1902 phrenology book. Yeah, people actually thought you could figure out someone's personality just by looking at the shape of their head, or bumps on their skull. Total pseudoscience vibes. Weird, funny, and a little creepy, all at once. Then we've got some Rye Crisp ads from the 1930s to 1950s. Pure vintage fat shaming disguised as health advice. They'd guilt people into eating their crackers to stay slim and look classy. Brutal, messed up, but weirdly stylish, giving you a full blast of retro diet culture. And of course, we can't forget Betty Page, the queen of pin-ups. Her 1950s shots are pure fire. That signature, black hair, bold poses, fearless confidence. She brought attitude and charm like no one else. Cheeky, daring, and totally iconic energy that still hits hard today.
The roller skating girls of the mid-20th century. Picture this, the music blasting, the skirts swinging, and the skates clicking on the pavement. Back then, roller skating wasn't just a hobby, it was a lifestyle. These photos show pure youthful energy, playful fashion, and the kind of carefree spirit that made skating a symbol of freedom and joy. Honestly, it makes you want to grab a pair of skates and hit the rink yourself. From there, we're rolling right into childhood nostalgia, vintage toys that remind us of simpler times. Forget iPads and video games. Kids back then had wooden dolls, tin cars, and board games that could keep them busy for hours. These toys weren't just entertainment. They sparked imagination and creativity. Each one tells a story of laughter and wonder, the kind of memories that never really fade. Looking at these photos, you can almost hear the echoes of kids playing outside until the streetlights came on. Now let's step into something unexpected, the bathrooms of the 1920s. Sounds random, but trust me, these photos are fire. We're talking clawfoot tubs, pedestal sinks, and crisp tiled floors. This was the era when indoor plumbing became widespread, and homes leveled up in both hygiene and style. It wasn't just about getting clean, it was about comfort, design, and that early modern aesthetic that still inspires bathrooms today. And speaking of futuristic vibes, the 1960s gave us something wild. André Corrèze and his space-age fashion. This man was straight up ahead of his time. Sleek lines, bold geometric shapes, vinyl metallic fabrics. His designs were like something out of a sci-fi movie. Inspired by the space race, Corrèze captured the optimism and innovation of the decade. He didn't just design clothes, he designed the future, and the photos show just how much his vision shaped modern style. But here's where it gets interesting. Victorian photography. You've probably heard the rumor that a bunch of those stiff-looking portraits were post-mortem photos, right? Like people thought they were taking pictures of dead relatives. Turns out that's mostly a myth. The truth is, most of those folks were alive. They just looked stiff because exposure times were so long back then. The serious expressions and formal poses gave off that somber vibe, and over time people just assumed the worst. These photos are a reminder of how easily myths get wrapped around history. Shifting gears, let's cruise into the 1930s and check out some home interiors. This was peak Art Deco influence. Polished wood furniture, patterned wallpaper, stylish light fixtures. Homes had this mix of elegance and coziness that really reflected the era. Even though the 1930s were tough times, people still found ways to make their homes glamorous yet comfortable. The photos show off that balance of resilience and style perfectly. Now let's fast forward to the 1980s, an era that was all about bold moves. Enter the leg warmer craze. It started in dance studios, blew up in aerobics classes, and then spilled out onto the streets. Movies like Flashdance made leg warmers iconic, and suddenly everyone was rocking bright colors, oversized fits, and layered looks. It was more than fashion. It was a vibe, an energy, a reflection of the fitness wave that defined the decade. Speaking of vibes, let's talk men's cologne ads from the 60s and 70s. These ads weren't just selling a scent, they were selling masculinity itself. Rugged dudes, suave looks, and promises of irresistible charm. These ads were basically telling men, spray this and you're instantly the man. The imagery captured the cultural mood of the time when confidence and allure were everything. Looking at those ads now, it's wild to see how they packaged up identity in a bottle. But if you really want to see energy captured in photos, check out the jazz club scenes from the 1920s through the 1940s. These shots are electric. You've got the lively dance floors, sharp suits, smoky rooms, and the sound of swing and jazz carrying the night. This was a cultural revolution. Music, nightlife, and style all merging together to create an unforgettable vibe. These photos don't just show people having fun, they show a movement in full swing, pun intended. And finally, we close with the timeless elegance of Myrna Loy. Known as the queen of classic Hollywood charm, Loy had this perfect mix of wit, grace, and screen presence that made audiences fall in love with her. These old photos highlight her beauty and sophistication, showing exactly why she stood out during cinema's golden age. She wasn't just a star, she was an icon, and her legacy still shines through. Fascinating pictures show Maine woodsmen on a dangerous logging operation in 1943. These images highlight the harsh and risky conditions faced by lumberjacks in Maine during World War II. Using traditional tools and horse-drawn sleds, the woodsmen demonstrated remarkable strength, skill, and resilience. These photographs capture the demanding work environment and offer a glimpse into one of America's most challenging wartime industries. These idyllic photos capture the vanished fishing culture of Portugal in the 1950s. They showcase the daily lives of Portuguese fishermen, traditional boats, handmade nets, and close-knit community life. These images preserve a way of life that largely disappeared due to modernization, offering a window into Portugal's rich maritime heritage and coastal traditions of the mid-20th century. A vintage Victorian photo album offers a gentleman's guide to self-defense maneuvers from 1895. The album illustrates martial arts techniques and self-defense strategies for men in late 19th century England. Through photographs, it demonstrates stances, holds, and counterattacks, reflecting Victorian values of discipline, etiquette, and physical training. This collection provides insight into how gentlemen were taught to defend themselves with skill and composure. Idyllic vintage photographs capture the rustic rural life in Victorian England, 1857. These images portray farmers, cottages, fields, and village life before industrialization transformed the countryside. They preserve the simplicity, traditions, and hard work of rural communities, offering a nostalgic glimpse into 19th century English life and the natural beauty that defined the Victorian countryside. The stereoscopic ghost photos that spooked the Victorian public in 1865 reveal the fascination with the supernatural. Using early 3D photography, these images appeared to show ghostly figures, frightening and intriguing viewers alike. They blend reality with illusion, highlighting Victorian society's interest in spiritualism and the afterlife while showcasing the creative potential of photography to explore and manipulate perception. The photographic story of the Great New York to Paris Auto Race of 1908 documents one of the most extraordinary early automobile challenges. Drivers traveled from New York to Paris, navigating treacherous terrain, snow, and mud. These photographs capture the daring spirit, mechanical struggles, and global excitement surrounding early motoring adventures, celebrating human endurance and the pioneering era of international car racing. Portraits of Alaskan Inuit, captured by the Lohman Bros Studio from 1900 to 1930, document the lives of indigenous people in Alaska. These photographs highlight traditions, clothing, and cultural practices during a period of significant change. By preserving the dignity, resilience, and artistry of the Inuit, the images offer both historical and artistic insight into Alaska's indigenous communities in the early 20th century. Vintage and bizarre photos of exercise machines from 1920 to 1970 reveal the unusual approaches to fitness in the past. From vibrating belts to mechanical stretchers, these images show how inventors experimented with creative and sometimes strange equipment to promote health. They capture the evolution of exercise culture, highlighting both innovation and the quirky side of early fitness trends. Photographs of Kwakwaka'wakw's ceremonial dress and masks, captured by Edward Curtis from 1914 to 1915, preserve a vital cultural heritage. Curtis documented the intricate attire and masks of the Kwakwaka'wakw people of the Pacific Northwest coast. These images showcase the artistry, spirituality, and traditions of the community during a time of rapid cultural change, offering a visual record of their rich ceremonial practices. These vintage photos capture traveling circus performers in Northern Ireland between 1910 and 1911. The images reveal acrobats, clowns, animal trainers, and entertainers touring small towns, bringing excitement and spectacle. They offer a nostalgic glimpse into the lively, challenging world of traveling circuses, highlighting both the charm and the hardships of performers during the early 20th century. The diving horse stunt, documented in vintage photos from 1900 to 1970, was one of the most dangerous entertainment acts of the time. Horses leapt from high platforms into pools of water, often with riders on their backs. These images captured the extreme risks, daring spectacle, and thrilling appeal of the act, reflecting a bygone era of adventurous and now controversial performances. Haunting portraits from an English lunatic asylum in the 1870s reveal the realities of Victorian psychiatric care. These photographs document patients, their expressions, postures, and living conditions, highlighting societal attitudes toward mental illness. The images provide a stark, unsettling glimpse into 19th century mental health practices, preserving an important, if disturbing, aspect of medical and social history. Stunning photos depicting rebellious fashion at Woodstock in 1969 capture the iconic counterculture of the era. Festival goers displayed eclectic clothing, colorful patterns, and unconventional accessories, expressing defiance of mainstream norms. These images preserve the creativity, spirit, and revolutionary attitude of youth culture during a transformative cultural moment, reflecting freedom, individuality, and the vibrant energy of Woodstock. Photos of Victorian women who never cut their hair from 1860 to 1900 showcase an unusual aspect of femininity. These images highlight exceptionally long hair, reflecting societal beauty standards, personal pride, and symbolism associated with hair during the era. They offer insight into Victorian aesthetics and fascination with elaborate hairstyles, preserving a distinctive cultural practice of 19th century England. Courtship stereo cards depicting naughty and suggestive scenes from everyday life, produced between 1875 and 1905, reveal playful and flirtatious interactions of the time. Designed for 3D viewing, these cards often illustrated courtship, teasing, and humor in daily life. They provide insight into Victorian and Edwardian attitudes toward romance and social norms, blending entertainment with subtle social commentary. Vintage pictures of bizarre vending machines capture strange and forgotten inventions from the past. These photographs reveal how early inventors created mechanical devices to sell unusual products, from cigarettes to unexpected items. They highlight both creativity and eccentricity in early consumer culture, offering a fascinating glimpse into a quirky aspect of everyday life in technological experimentation. Gritty photos of New York City in the 1970s document urban decay and street life. The images portray crumbling buildings, graffiti, crime, and the vibrant yet challenging experiences of city residents. They reveal both the hardships and resilience of people living in economically and socially turbulent times, providing an unflinching snapshot of the city during a period of decline and cultural transformation. The bizarre monowheel, captured in vintage photographs from 1930 to 1940, was a unique single-wheel vehicle that fascinated the public. These images show its unusual design, operation, and mechanical ingenuity. Often experimental, the monowheel represented early 20th century curiosity in personal transportation, showcasing inventive engineering and the adventurous spirit of an era eager to explore unconventional modes of mobility. Stunning photos of Marilyn Monroe, taken by John Flory in the 1950s, highlight the actress's charm and glamour. These images captured Monroe during the height of her fame, showcasing her personality, style, and the culture of 1950s Hollywood. They preserve striking and intimate moments, celebrating one of cinema's most enduring icons and offering a timeless glimpse into her star power and public appeal. Inside a California alligator farm in the 1920s, children could ride and play with live alligators, as documented in vintage photographs. These images reveal a daring and unusual amusement attraction where kids interact closely with these dangerous reptiles. The photos provide insight into early 20th century entertainment, highlighting both the novelty and risk of attractions that reflected a culture of adventurous, hands-on amusement experiences.
Back in the 1970s, men's fashion took some wild turns. Bell-bottoms, bold polyester shirts, oversized collars, and clashing colors filled the streets. Once symbols of rebellion and freedom, these styles now feel like a fashion experiment that went a little too far. Tina Turner's journey from the late 1950s to the 1980s is captured through powerful photographs showing her evolution from raw, explosive performances with Ike to her iconic solo presence. Each image reflects her unstoppable energy and the passion that crowned her the queen of rock and roll. In the Soviet Union of the 1980s, youth quietly rebelled against a rigid system. Punks, goths, and metalheads flaunted spiked hair, leather jackets, and Western-inspired fashion. These photos capture the courage and defiance of a generation that dared to be different behind the Iron Curtain. A glimpse into a Prague office in 1937 reveals the largest vertical filing system of its time, towering rows of documents stretching skyward. It's a powerful reminder of how bureaucracy once operated on a massive manual scale before the era of computers and digital archives. Inventor Alexander Graham Bell didn't stop with the telephone, he also experimented with flight. These remarkable images show his innovative tetrahedral kites, built from triangular cells soaring into the sky. They were early, ambitious attempts to conquer the dream of human flight. Standing over 7.5 feet tall, Ralph Tex Madsen earned fame as the tallest cowboy in America. These photos show his towering presence in classic Western attire, embodying both myth and reality as a living symbol of frontier legend and larger-than-life Americana. Hand-colored postcards from 1890s Switzerland reveal alpine life in vivid detail. Snow-capped peaks, peaceful villages, and pastoral scenes. These early color images transported viewers to a world of scenic beauty long before color photography became common. Rare portraits from the Victorian era show men embracing tenderly a powerful, silent challenge to a society that forbade open affection between them. Each image speaks volumes about hidden love, deep friendship, and emotional connection in a time of strict social norms. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, people literally moved entire houses not with trucks, but with horses, rollers, and sheer manpower. These photos capture incredible feats of engineering and perseverance, as homes rolled slowly across fields and streets to new destinations. These striking portraits of Maori women showcase the traditional facial tattoos known as Tomoko sacred marks of lineage and identity. Captured just before colonial bans suppressed the practice, the images preserve the artistry and strength of a culture determined to survive. Beautiful lantern slides from Norway in the early 1900s depict towering fjords, mountain villages, and rushing waterfalls. Painstakingly hand-colored, they brought the dramatic beauty of Scandinavia to audiences worldwide, fueling curiosity and wanderlust during the golden age of travel lectures. The Great Depression forced millions into desperate circumstances, and Hooverville's sprawling shantytowns became home to the unemployed and homeless. These haunting photos reveal a landscape of poverty and resilience, where people built makeshift shelters and clung to hope amid economic ruin. As cities grew and cars filled the streets, vertical parking garages emerged as futuristic solutions. These early 20th century structures, part innovation, part experiment, transformed urban infrastructure and changed how we thought about space in the automobile age. Crinoline's enormous hoop skirts worn by women in the mid-1800s were fashionable but deadly. Fires, accidents, and collapses were tragically common. These photos reveal the dramatic elegance of the era's style and the hidden dangers women faced in the name of fashion. Early 20th century Parisian street photography captures a pivotal moment in fashion history when formal Edwardian styles gave way to modern, liberated silhouettes. The elegant coats, cloche hats, and tailored suits reflect a society on the brink of transformation. Vintage ads from decades past reveal blatant sexism depicting women as servants, housewives, and objects. Shocking today, they are a reminder of how far advertising and society has come in challenging and rejecting harmful stereotypes. Colorized photographs from early 20th century Petra and southern Jordan capture the timeless beauty of the rose-red city carved into rock. These rare glimpses document both the ancient majesty of the site and the lives of people who lived among its ruins. The real-life models behind Grant Wood's iconic American Gothic painting pose proudly before the original house. Their stern expressions mirror the timeless image that became a symbol of rural America, a perfect blend of art, reality, and identity. Jean-Marc Cote's postcards from the late 1800s imagined the year 2000 with flying firemen, underwater schools, and air taxis. These playful visions show how people once dreamed of the future, sometimes wildly off base, yet filled with optimism and imagination. The traditional Rwandan hairstyle known as amasunzu, sculpted into intricate upward crests, symbolize social status, beauty, and identity. These rare photographs from the 1920s and 1930s celebrate the artistry and cultural depth behind one of Africa's most distinctive hairstyles. Back in the USSR, the government went hard on booze, and those creative anti-alcohol posters were their secret weapon. From dramatic scenes of families torn apart to bold slogans warning of vodka's dark side, they weren't just art. They were pure propaganda, mixing fear, hope, and strict Soviet discipline. These tough little hustlers known as newsies weren't just kids, they were the backbone of America's news game. From sunrise to sundown, they shouted headlines on crowded streets, fighting poverty one paper at a time. Their worn faces and fearless eyes tell stories of grit and sacrifice that built a nation. Believe it or not, elephants were more than circus stars. They were wartime MVPs. During both world wars, these gentle giants hauled heavy artillery, cleared wreckage, and moved vital supplies when machines broke down. Their strength and calm nature made them the ultimate battlefield buddies. Meet the Spacelander, the wild retro-futuristic bike straight out of a sci-fi comic. With bold curves and space-age style, it promised the future on two wheels. Too pricey to go mainstream, it became a collector's dream, a symbol of 1950s innovation and imagination. In 1509, Martin Waldseemüller dropped a total game-changer, the first map to ever call the New World America. A tribute to explorer Amerigo Vespucci, this single piece of parchment literally renamed a continent and reshaped how humanity saw the globe. Caroline Munro wasn't just another pretty face, she was the ultimate 60s. 70s bombshell. From Hammer horror movies to Bond girl fame, her stunning looks and magnetic charm owned every frame. These rare shots capture an era when beauty and boldness ruled the screen. The Will and William West case in 1903 was a real-life plot twist. Two unrelated men looked exactly the same, confusing the prison system. That shocking mix-up proved mugshots weren't enough, sparking the rise of fingerprinting as the ultimate way to identify criminals. These epic 1880 to 1900 photos show explorers hacking through jungles to uncover the lost world of the Maya. Crumbling temples, mysterious carvings, and ancient cities revealed a civilization far ahead of its time. Each shot feels like stepping into a long-lost secret that rewrote history. The Netherlands in the 1890s looked like something out of a fairy tale, and these color postcards prove it. Windmills spinning, canals glistening, locals in traditional gear, every scene captures a simpler, magical Dutch life before modern times swept in. Elizabeth Taylor wasn't just Hollywood royalty, she defined classic glam. These 1950s and 1960s photos show her transformation from teenage starlet to timeless icon. With violet eyes, bold fashion, and unmatched charisma, Liz redefined what it meant to be a screen goddess. Isaac and Rosa's 1863 photo hit America like a punch to the heart. Two freed slave children representing hope after centuries of oppression. Their innocent faces became powerful abolitionist symbols, showing that freedom wasn't just a law, it was a deeply human right. Back in 1930, Ecta Wagner ads dreamed big, picturing a future of flying cars, robot helpers, and sky-high cities. These imaginative cards weren't just selling products, they sold hope, capturing the sci-fi optimism of a generation obsessed with what's next. These 1890s photochrome postcards bring old Ireland to life in stunning color. Rugged coasts, ancient castles, and cozy villages burst with charm and nostalgia. More than just souvenirs, they're time machines, windows into a dreamy, timeless Ireland. This jaw-dropping 1903 image shows two towering Kashmiri giants beside photographer James Rickelton, and they make him look tiny. Their incredible height fascinated scientists and travelers, capturing a moment where myth and reality literally stood side by side. These gritty portraits from 1970 to 1990 show the OG British skinhead subculture raw, rebellious, and unapologetically bold. Born from working-class pride and ska music, it was more than a look, it was a way of life that shook the foundations of UK youth culture. Jane Mansfield wasn't just a bombshell, she was a cultural explosion. These dazzling 1950s and 60s photos capture her playful charm and bold charisma. Fearless and unforgettable, Jane rewrote the rules of fame and became an eternal symbol of vintage beauty. People really tried to tame zebras between 1890 and 1940, and the results were wild. From pulling carriages to riding like horses, humans wanted to domesticate the untamable. But spoiler alert, zebras weren't interested in playing by our rules. Raquel Welch was the ultimate 60s dream girl, bold, breathtaking, and pure Hollywood magic. These vibrant shots capture the confidence and timeless beauty that made her an icon. With screen-stealing presence, Raquel wasn't just a star, she defined glamour. Before fingerprints took over, the Bertillon system measured every inch of a criminal's body. Head size, arm length, you name it, to ID suspects. It might sound wild now, but in 1894 it was cutting-edge science, paving the way for modern forensic techniques. Man, this shoots straight up wild. In 1955, the eccentric art genius Salvador Dali turned his seaside villa into a dreamscape. Every frame screams otherworldly. With that twisted mustache and bizarre props, Dali wasn't posing. He was straight living his imagination. Yo, these shots are pure vintage vibes. Coney Island was poppin'. Packed beaches, wild rides, and killer summer energy. You can almost hear the carnival tunes and smell that popcorn. Straight up old school Americana frozen in color. Rita Hayworth defined classic Hollywood glam. She lit up the silver screen with that smile and fiery red hair. Every photo screams confidence and charm. She wasn't just a star, she was the fantasy of the 1940s. Pure vintage magic, no cap. Ben Shahn captured small-town America like a pro. London, Ohio, 1938. People chillin', laughing, and just vibing through life. No filters, no fake poses, just real folks in real moments. Straight-up heartland energy. Claudia Cardinale was stunning. With that mix of elegance and fire, she ruled the screen. Every shot's got that movie magic glow. She didn't need filters. She was the filter. Timeless charm, forever iconic. Pam Grier, total queen energy. She redefined badass beauty, serving fierce looks and breaking Hollywood barriers. From Coffee to Foxy Brown, she owned every scene with that fearless aura. Straight up legend. These old school machines are wild. Dr. Gustav Zander basically invented fitness before gyms were even a thing. Those steampunk contraptions looked like torture devices, but they were the blueprint for your modern workout grind. Picasso's studio was a whole vibe. Paint everywhere, chaos everywhere, and yet pure genius in motion. These intimate shots catch him in his zone, breathing art like oxygen. Dude wasn't just an artist, he was art. This Lil ride's a whole mood. The KR200 looked like a mini jet cockpit. Quirky, tiny, and totally iconic. Not the fastest, but man, it had style. Retro drip on 3 wheels, baby. Yeah. This one's low-key eerie but crazy cool. These masks captured final faces of history's legends, from kings to poets. It's creepy, yeah, but also kinda beautiful, like touching immortality through plaster. Straight up haunting vibes. That moment was cinematic. At a White House gala, Princess Diana hit the floor with John freaking Travolta like a real-life movie scene. Royal Grace met Hollywood swagger and the world just froze. Total fairy tale vibes. Bruce Lee was pure lightning in human form. Every pic shows discipline, focus, and power. He wasn't just flexing. He was building a legacy that still hits hard today. Absolute icon status. These shots are gold. Brando chillin', Pacino looking intense, Coppola running the show. It's movie magic before the world even knew. You can feel the weight of history being made right there on set. Pure 90s vibes right here. Selena lit up her Coca-Cola shoot with that killer smile and unstoppable confidence. She wasn't just repping a brand. She was repping pride, culture, and timeless Latina beauty. Straight up icon energy. Sophia Loren was the blueprint. Pure class, pure power. Every shot drips with confidence and elegance. She didn't just follow fame, she made fame chase her. Golden Age goddess, hands down. Andre was a unit. Over 7 feet tall, larger than life, and still humble as hell. These pics show both his beast mode and gentle side. The man wasn't just a wrestler, he was a living myth. Talk about timeless beauty. Those color photos of Scotland hit different. Misty hills, ancient castles, and pure peaceful vibes. It's like stepping into a fairy tale before the world got loud. Old school magic. No filters needed. Vicky Dugan was bold before bold was a thing. Her backless gowns made Hollywood lose its mind. They called her the Back, and she wore that title proud. Confidence, attitude, and pure vintage rebellion. Clint Eastwood was the definition of cool. That stare, that swagger. He didn't play tough, he was tough. Whether in spaghetti westerns or real life, he was pure grit and charm. Hollywood legend mode, always on. Then we step into Ellis Island, 1906 to 1911, where hope met reality. Immigrants from all over the globe arrived, eyes full of dreams and fear. These colorized portraits breathe life into history. Every wrinkle, every smile tells a story of courage and fresh beginnings. It's history with heart, not just black and white memory. Fast forward to the 60s, 80s, a young Arnold Schwarzenegger at his peak. The man was pure dedication, sculpting his destiny one rep at a time. Those poses? Legendary. That mindset? Unstoppable. He wasn't just lifting weights, he was lifting the idea of what's humanly possible. Now meet Brigitte Bardot, the French goddess who redefined beauty in the 50s and 60s. Wild, carefree, effortlessly stunning, Bardot's vibe was rebellious and magnetic. These photos capture her golden era. Messy hair, soft smile, and eyes that said, "I live by my own rules." Then the skies. The original wing walkers from the 1920s to the 80s were absolute maniacs in the best way. Standing on airplane wings mid-flight, wind tearing through their hair, no fear, no safety net, just guts. Old school thrill seekers who turned danger into performance art. Jump to 1978, a not yet famous Madonna in Michael McDonald's photo shoots. You can see it in her eyes, that bold, watch me rise energy. Before the fame, before the hits, she was already the storm. Confidence, chaos, and charisma all brewing in one young woman ready to take over the world. Now rewind further. America's national parks, 1870 to 1920. Early explorers, dusty boots, hand-me-down tents, just raw adventure. No selfies, no filters, just pure awe for the wilderness. These people were the OG adventurers who set the stage for every hiker and camper today, nature at its finest. Meanwhile, across the pond, Victorian London, 1873 to 1877. Street kids hustling, carriages clattering, fog hanging low. These photos show a city split in two. Grit and glamour side by side. It's raw, haunting, and so real you can almost smell the coal smoke. History doesn't get more alive than this. And then, the chills hit two Armenian women, 1895, rifles in hand, ready to face the Ottomans. Their eyes screamed strength and defiance. They weren't just fighters, they were symbols of resilience. Real warriors who stood tall when the world looked away. Courage like that? Timeless. Finally, 1988, Sami the chimp escapes his zoo, face to face with the director trying to talk him back home. It's wild, funny, and weirdly emotional. You can see the bondman and chimp, freedom and captivity, both just trying to understand each other. A real moment of soul in the chaos of life. Imagine a photograph of a firefighter battling a blaze in a brutal winter storm from 1880 to 1980, helmet iced over, hose frozen solid, but a heart burning hotter than the flames. He wasn't just a fireman. He was a warrior fighting nature itself. Frostbitten, soaked, exhausted, but he never quit. That's grit you can't fake. Now picture a photo of Central Park in 1942. A lazy Sunday in the middle of wartime America. A kid chasing pigeons, a couple laughing, a soldier stealing a quiet moment before heading back to chaos. For one afternoon, the world slowed down peace in the middle of a storm. You can almost hear the laughter, smell the grass, and feel the warmth of that late summer sun. Then comes the brutal beauty of a photograph from Greenland, 1888-1907. Life carved out of ice. A person wrapped in furs. Sled dogs pushing through endless white, a face weathered but proud. No comfort, no shortcuts, just survival. This isn't just an image, it's proof that human toughness has no temperature limit. The skies were a whole different stage during the 60s to 80s, when a photo of a stewardess ruled the air. Classy uniform, bold smile, and that effortless charm, the golden age of flying. But behind the glam, long hours, strict rules, and non-stop grind. Still, she handled it all like a pro, confident, stylish, and smooth. Flying back then wasn't just travel, it was an experience. Now brace yourself for a photograph from 1912, a Titanic survivor arriving home. The moment hits hard. Pale face, hollow eyes, a person who saw death up close and somehow lived to tell the tale. No Hollywood, no retakes, just real pain, real relief, and raw humanity. It's survival etched in a single expression, and it'll stay with you long after you look away. Then roll back to 1850-1880, where a photograph of a worker proudly posing with the tool of his trade tells the story of a nation being built. A carpenter, a miner, a blacksmith, every image screams pride and purpose. No filters, no flexing, just the look of someone who built the world we live in. Real job, real hustle, real person. Straight up blue-collar pride. Across the ocean, between 1918 and 1920, an American Red Cross photographer captures the haunting face of someone from the Balkans after war. A child, a mother, a soldier, eyes filled with both sorrow and strength. You can see the cost of conflict, but also the unbreakable will to survive. This photograph reminds us, even when everything's gone, humanity still stands tall. Then comes the weird and wonderful The Rhino, a 1954 all-terrain beast that looked like a tank and a tractor had a baby. Massive wheels, wild design, pure mad scientist energy. It could roll through snow, mud, whatever you threw at it. The kind of invention that screams, "Let's build it and see what happens." Classic mid-century innovation gone wild. Next stop, Old Ireland, 1885-1925. A photograph filled with a face lined by stories and a heart full of resilience. A fisherman, a farmer, a mother living a simple, hard life with pride. You can almost hear the sea wind, the laughter, the songs. This isn't just a photograph. It's a window into a soul that refuses to fade. And finally, a quiet moment from 1900, a photo of a department store worker on lunch break, sitting on a curb, sharing a sandwich, laughing through exhaustion. No phone, no distractions, just a real person catching a breath between endless shifts. In the 1930s to early 1950s, beauty wasn't judged by the face, it was judged by the ankle. Across America and Europe, women stood in lines while judges examined their ankles for grace and femininity. It sounds absurd now, but for that moment in time, elegance began at the ground, and a single turn of the ankle could crown a queen. In 1933, a fearless team of British aviators took flight over Mount Everest, the first humans to ever conquer its skies. With oxygen running low and freezing winds biting at their wings, they captured breathtaking photographs from above the world's highest peak. It wasn't just a flight, it was humanity rising beyond its limits. The turn of the century, a quiet man named James Gillingham was crafting miracles by hand. In 1900, he built lifelike prosthetic limbs using wood and leather, restoring hope and dignity to those who had lost theirs. Long before modern technology, his creations didn't just replace what was gone, they rebuilt lives. The year was 1890. In the Austrian Alps, vibrant photochromes of Tyrol captured mountains and valleys in colors no one had seen before. Long before digital cameras, these images brought landscapes to life with astonishing clarity, a glimpse of serenity frozen in early color magic. Venice Beach, 1970s. The sun, the rhythm, the freedom. Roller skaters glided across the boardwalk, spinning and laughing under California skies. It wasn't just skating, it was rebellion on wheels, a culture of self-expression born from music, sunshine, and style. In 1941, John Vachon wandered the streets of Chicago with his camera. He captured workers, dreamers, and survivors, people bound by grit and determination. His candid photographs painted a city not of steel and smoke, but of heart and humanity. Between 1950 and 1970, a macabre spectacle toured across Europe, dead whales on display. Massive carcasses were preserved and hauled from city to city, drawing fascinated crowds despite the unbearable stench. These haunting images remind us just how far human curiosity can go and how strange our definition of entertainment once was. 1914 Germany. 3 young farmers, dressed in their finest suits, walk proudly toward a village dance. Photographer August Sander captures their confidence, unaware that war is about to shatter their world. That single frame holds the innocence of youth, moments before it vanished forever. In 1902, French artist Albert Bergeret imagined the women of the future. His postcards showed women as pilots, scientists, and leaders, decades before those roles existed. He didn't just create art, he envisioned equality long before society dared to believe in it. Between 1938 and 1943, photographers documented rural Puerto Rico in its rawest form. Dusty roads, wooden homes, and faces hardened by work yet illuminated by pride. Amid poverty and hardship, these images reveal strength that never broke and a spirit that refused to fade. 1981. A tourist photo, or so it seemed. Pablo Escobar, the world's most feared drug lord, stood smiling with his family outside the White House. A man hunted by nations, posing steps away from the seat of American power. Arrogance, audacity, or simply a photo that defied logic? Either way, it became one of history's boldest images. 1918. The world gasped for breath. The Spanish flu pandemic swept across continents, and masks became as common as fear itself. On streets, in schools, and on trains, faces were covered, voices muffled. These old photographs remind us that history repeats itself, often with chilling familiarity. 1955. Tragedy by the sea. A couple stands on a California beach, waves crashing behind them. Moments earlier, their child had vanished into the ocean. The photograph captured no faces, no tears, only grief in posture and silence. It remains one of the most haunting images ever taken. From 1945 to 1959, Genevieve Naylor turned her lens toward post-war fashion. Her photographs shimmered with life-bright dresses, bold colors, and women rediscovering joy after years of loss. Each frame wasn't just about fashion. It was about rebirth. Between 1858 and 1872, Lewis Carroll photographed a young girl named Alice Liddell, the real Alice in Wonderland. Behind every image lies the spark that inspired one of literature's greatest tales. Her innocent gaze became the doorway to a world of imagination that would never fade. 1957, Hollywood. Sophia Loren hosts a dinner party. Jane Mansfield arrives, in a dress that left nothing to the imagination. When she sat down beside Sophia, the world's most famous side-eye was born. One glance, one moment, and a photograph that defined Hollywood's scandal forever. The 1960s, the age of the madman. Sharp suits, slick hair, cigarettes, and swagger. Advertising wasn't just a job, it was identity, power, and art. These photographs captured an era when confidence was currency, and style was everything. 1913, a time when America was still figuring things out. Parcel post had just begun, and parents found a shocking loophole. They could mail their children. With stamps pinned to their clothes, infants were handed to mail carriers safely delivered to relatives miles away. Between 1900 and 1935, the first deep-sea divers looked like men from another planet. Heavy brass helmets, thick air hoses, and lead boots, every descent was a risk between life and death. But they did it anyway, uncovering a world no human had ever seen. 1929, the R-100 airship. They called it the Flying Hotel. Cabins, lounges, and silver service dinners all floating above the clouds. It was elegance in motion, the dream of luxury travel before airplanes ruled the skies. Though the airship era ended, its photographs still whisper of a future that almost was.
In the 1950s, thrill-seekers found themselves in what could only be described as a human spinning blender, the Rotor Ride, a massive barrel-shaped chamber that spun so fast, riders were pinned to the wall as the floor dropped away. It wasn't magic, just physics' centrifugal force holding them in place. Dangerous? Absolutely. But back then, safety standards were a distant afterthought. It was all about the rush, the kind of reckless fun only the mid-century could invent. From spinning walls to spinning snow in the early 1900s, a daring sport called skioring emerged in Norway. Skiers, armed with nothing but ropes and courage, were pulled across frozen landscapes by galloping horses. What began as a way to travel quickly over snow soon evolved into a breathtaking competition of balance, skill, and speed. A dance between man, beast, and the biting cold. As technology advanced, people found new ways to experience life and music. In the 1950s, record stores introduced vinyl listening booths, cozy soundproof corners where you could test a new album before buying it. Picture it, the crackle of the record, the warmth of analog sound, the moment you found a song that spoke to your soul. It was music discovery at its purest, intimate, personal, and deeply human. But not all photographs from the past carry joy. Some reveal uncomfortable truths. Between 1890 and 1914, colonial-era postcards like this one painted a romanticized image of empire, a European officer lounging with a local woman, presented as a symbol of exotic adventure. yet behind the posed smiles lay a harsh reality of exploitation and power imbalance. These images weren't just souvenirs, they were tools of propaganda, shaping the narrative of superiority that fueled colonial rule. Far from those scenes of empire, another story was unfolding at sea. This haunting photograph shows Robert Falcon Scott's ship, the Terra Nova, during his doomed 1910-1913 expedition to the South Pole. Scott and his crew battled unimaginable cold and exhaustion, only to discover the Norwegians had beaten them there. On their return journey, they perished just 11 miles from safety. The Terra Nova, standing proud against Antarctic ice, remains a symbol of human courage and the thin line between glory and tragedy. Back on warmer shores, the world of fitness was flexing its muscles literally. In 1949, the original Muscle Beach in Santa Monica became the birthplace of modern bodybuilding. Under the California sun, athletes lifted, flipped, and posed, surrounded by crowds who cheered their strength and artistry. It wasn't about fame, it was about passion, discipline, and the thrill of pushing human potential to its limits. Yet some dared to push limits of a different kind, like those who went over Niagara Falls in barrels. From 1901 to 1985, adventurers climbed into makeshift capsules, hoping to survive the deadly plunge for fame and fortune. Some, like Annie Edson Taylor, a 63-year-old schoolteacher, made it. Many did not. Their barrels, wooden and steel, became symbols of both courage and madness, humanity's eternal urge to challenge nature itself. Meanwhile, another kind of madness was sweeping through society propaganda against women's suffrage. Between 1900 and 1913, posters like the infamous Crying Baby campaign warned that giving women the vote would destroy families and morality. These manipulative images shamed women for wanting equality, painting them as neglectful mothers. Today, they stand as chilling reminders of how fear was weaponized against progress and how women persevered anyway. By 1939, technology met romance in one of the strangest ways imaginable, the osculometer, or kiss meter. Couples were invited to test the power of their kiss using a so-called scientific device that measured passion through electrical impulses. It was part stunt, part science fiction, a quirky glimpse into a world eager to quantify love itself. Around the same time, explorers and photographers were capturing another kind of human story: the Bedouin nomads of Arabia in the 1890s. Dressed in layered robes and armed with curved daggers, they roamed the desert with camels and courage, living by a strict code of honor. Their lives were harsh, yet free-lived under the endless sky, guided by stars and tradition. In contrast, the 1930s and 1940s saw the rise of fear-fueled propaganda in America's own backyard. Posters for films like Reefer Madness screamed warnings about marijuana, calling it the weed with roots in hell. These sensational films depicted chaos, addiction, and moral decay, painting cannabis as the ultimate evil. They weren't about science, they were about control. A time when fear shaped policy more than truth. And while fear ruled cinema, absurdity ruled dating culture. In 1938, women's magazines offered strict dating tips: never talk too much, don't yawn, don't drink too much, and above all, never outshine your date. Images like this of a woman fainting mid-dinner mocked those who broke the rules. It's funny now, but it shows how tightly society once tried to control women's behavior in the name of proper romance. By the 1980s, all that restraint was long gone. Spring break had become a massive cultural explosion. Beaches filled with thousands of college students celebrating youth, music, and freedom. MTV cameras rolled, beers clinked, and crowds roared. No social media, no filters, just real chaotic joy. It was the golden age of youthful rebellion, sunburns, and sand-covered memories. Rewind half a century, though, and the idea of beauty looked very different. Between 1910 and 1930, women sat beneath giant metal contraptions, early hairdryers that looked more like space helmets than beauty tools. They were heavy, noisy, and sometimes dangerous, but they symbolized progress. The promise that technology could make beauty effortless, even if it meant strapping your head into a robot. Around the same time, science was taking even greater risks, like this tiny bottle of Bayer heroin from the early 1900s. Once sold legally as a cough medicine, heroin was marketed as a safe, non-addictive alternative to morphine. Cocaine was used the same way, even in soft drinks and tonics. It took decades for the world to realize the damage caused by these miracle drugs and to begin regulating what was once freely sold in pharmacies.
The black and white scene from the late 1950s scientists racing to fight the deadly 1957 influenza outbreak. A medical professional leans in, taking a throat swab from a man under harsh light, while researchers observe intensely in the background. These samples would help isolate the virus and create the vaccine that saved millions. It is a powerful reminder of the urgent, hands-on work that shaped modern medicine. From the lab, we walk straight onto the stylish streets of Edwardian London between 1905 and 1908. A young woman dressed in a high-necked blouse with puffed sleeves and a grand, wide-brimmed hat walks amid horse-drawn carriages and the early bustle of urban life. Her elegance captures not just a moment of fashion, but a moment of London transforming into a modern city. Jump forward to a vintage hand-washing poster from the early 1900s, where bright, bold figures remind the public to wash their hands before eating. One worker scrubs thoroughly under running water, while another holds food a vivid educational message from a time when posters were the world's public health lifeline. Then suddenly we're surrounded by music, mud, and pure freedom at Woodstock 1969. A young woman dances barefoot as a cheering crowd circles around her. Despite the chaos, rain, and mud, hundreds of thousands came together for peace, love, and music, a moment that defined an entire generation. But history is not just joy. In 1941, a classic American mother bends over a bathtub, washing or preparing it, a quiet, everyday reminder of the strength and discipline of women who held families together during wartime, balancing home life and uncertainty with grace. From there, we witness one of humanity's greatest engineering achievements, the construction of the Panama Canal between 1881 and 1914. A vast trench stretches across the landscape, lined with tracks and steam-powered machinery working tirelessly. This canal, carved through unforgiving terrain, forever changed global trade and stands as a testament to human determination. Next, we enter the early era of mobile phones, where a businessman proudly holds a massive brick phone in a bustling 1970s or early 80s street. These early devices had limited battery life and few functions, but they symbolized power, wealth, and a bold technological leap that paved the way for today's smartphones. Then we return to the battlefields of the early 20th century, where a soldier and his dogs wear gas masks, a haunting image from a time when chemical warfare threatened both humans and the animals serving beside them. These dogs acted as messengers, scouts, and protectors, and their masks were essential for survival in toxic conditions. From war to warmth, we travel to Italy between 1925 and 1955, where a young worker carries long sheets of freshly made pasta on wooden racks. His bright smile reflects the joy and pride of traditional Italian pasta making, when every piece was crafted and dried by hand in small, family-run workshops. But not all images are comforting. In 1990, a 106-year-old Armenian woman grips an AKM rifle, protecting her home during regional conflict. Her weathered face, wrapped in traditional clothing, tells a story of unimaginable endurance. Her strength reminds us that courage knows no age. Then we meet Anne Frank, not just the icon, but the girl. Her gentle, thoughtful expression reflects innocence mixed with depth. Her diary, written while hiding during the Holocaust, became a voice of hope, resilience, and humanity that continues to move the world. We move into a mid-century office where a professional woman in crisp workwear takes notes while speaking on the phone, a scene representing the evolution of women's roles in the workforce. From modest blouses to tailored suits, women carve their place in office culture, shaping a new era of independence and equality. Suddenly, we see one of the strangest inventions of the early 20th century, a baby in a wire cage hanging outside an apartment window. Between 1934 and 1948, these baby cages were designed to give children fresh air in crowded cities. Though intended for health, they now appear shockingly dangerous and bizarre, a reminder of how drastically parenting norms have changed. Then we enter the world of early photographic manipulation, long before Photoshop. A clever illusion shows a man both painting and posing for his own portrait created using double exposure and composite printing, proving that the urge to bend reality through imagery is far older than digital editing. Next, we witness the monumental relocation of the Abu Simbel temples in Egypt from 1964 to 1968. Workers gently move the colossal head of Pharaoh Ramses II, lifting ancient stone pieces some weighing over 30 tons to protect them from rising waters. This UNESCO-led project remains one of the boldest acts of archaeological preservation in history. But history also holds darker truths. A heartbreaking image from the early 1900s to 1958 shows a young indigenous child being displayed in a human zoo, surrounded by Western spectators. These exhibits stripped people of dignity, treating them as curiosities. This photo forces us to confront a painful legacy of racism and colonial exploitation, one that must never be forgotten. We then enter a vast drafting room from the 1950s to the 1980s, where rows of engineers and architects lean over giant blueprint tables, meticulously drawing by hand. Before AutoCAD revolutionized design, every line required precision, patience, and craftsmanship, a tribute to the designers who built the modern world with nothing but tools, paper, and skill. A man clinging to a ledge, held tightly by someone trying to save him from a dangerous fall. It's a raw moment of human compassion in the face of crisis. From there, we move to a solemn memorial portrait of a young couple whose love story ended tragically amid the turmoil of wartime Sarajevo. Surrounded by flowers, their faces echo innocence, devotion, and heartbreaking loss. Next, we take to the sky, literally, as we witness an early experimental flying car soaring above the landscape. This bold invention, with its compact frame and airplane-like wings, represents a time when innovators imagined a future where cars took flight. Then comes a powerful collage of iconic historical photographs, each capturing a pivotal moment, from protests and triumphs to unforgettable cultural milestones, reminding us how images can change the way we see the world. Shifting into the 1960s, we step inside the pioneering Bell Labs data center, where two women operate massive machines that help shape modern computing. Their work underscores the teamwork and innovation behind early technological breakthroughs. But long before modern medicine, there were unusual health experiments, like light therapy. Here, three men wearing protective goggles sit wrapped in towels under early therapeutic lamps, a reminder of how experimental and unconventional medical treatments once were. Fast forward to the 1970s and 80s, where a person browses movie shelves lined with VHS tapes in a vintage video rental store. In an age before streaming, this was how movie night began, digging through colorful covers to pick the perfect film. We then witness an Olympic podium scene shadowed by politics, where a woman performs the Nazi salute under the pressure of propaganda. It's a stark reminder of the complex role athletes like Helene Mayer navigated in dangerous times. Our next stop is an intimate portrait of a person lost in quiet emotion. Head bowed, hand adorned with rings surrounded by soft flowers. The black and white tones highlight a moment of vulnerability and artistic depth. As twilight falls, we arrive at a classic drive-in theater, where rows of cars face a glowing screen beneath the evening sky. Families gather, headlights dim, ready to watch a movie surrounded by open air and summer breeze. Joy bursts forward as excited crowds run across Disneyland's Castle Bridge on opening day in 1955. The energy is electric. This is the first time the public experiences what would become the happiest place on Earth. Traveling back even further, we see daily life in Jerusalem at the end of Ottoman rule. One person balances a heavy load atop their head, while another sits among rubble near historic stone buildings, capturing the spirit and resilience of the era. In post-war Germany, Simple rounded Volkswagen Beetles line an industrial courtyard. These early people's cars represent a nation rebuilding itself and redefining transportation for ordinary citizens. Jump ahead to the early 80s, where cheers erupt around a brand new DeLorean as workers celebrate their creation. Its stainless steel body and gull-wing doors shine with ambition, just before the car's troubled legacy unfolds. Then we enter a colorful arcade filled with mechanical games from 1968, long before digital screens existed. Lights flash, levers clack, and metal balls ricochet in a world where fun was entirely physical. Suddenly it's 1995, and hysteria fills the air. A beaming shopper holds 2 boxed copies of Windows 95 high above the crowd. This moment marks a technological revolution that transformed personal computing forever. We step into the shadowy coded world of Russian criminal tattoos. Across a person's chest, symbolic designs, eyes, eagles, religious icons, tell a hidden story of rank, ideology, and criminal history. Each tattoo is a message, understood only by those who lived within that world. From the ocean, we move to the streets of 1918. Police officers stand lined in formation, faces hidden behind cloth masks, protecting themselves from the deadly influenza pandemic sweeping the world. Their heavy coats and stern expressions capture a moment when illness reshaped everyday life overnight. Fast forward to 1987, inside a Polish operating room. Dr. Zbigniew Religa sits exhausted beside a patient, wires tangled everywhere, moments after completing an unbelievable 23-hour heart transplant surgery. His intense gaze on the monitors reminds us of the devotion and sacrifice behind medical miracles. Travel back again to the early 1900s, where a young bicycle messenger stands in dusty streets, gripping the handlebars of his simple bike. For thousands of kids between 1908 and 1917, delivering telegrams wasn't just a job, it was survival. Then comes a wholesome piece of history. A cheerful crowd of children swarms a Jugendbuchmobile, a mid-century bookmobile traveling from town to town delivering stories and imagination to rural communities. These mobile libraries kept the joy of reading alive between 1910 and 1960. But history also holds tragedy, such as the unforgettable explosion of the Hindenburg in 1937. Flames tear through the massive airship as it collapses mid-air, ending the dream of luxury Zeppelin travel in a matter of seconds. The gritty underworld of New York City's subway system in the 1970s and 80s shows 2 young women chatting casually inside a vandalized train car. Despite the reputation for crime, chaos, and graffiti, moments like this reveal the everyday humanity that lived beneath the surface. From subways to strong women, the early 1900s brought pioneering female bodybuilders who flexed proudly against expectations. One woman stands poised, elegant hat perched atop her head, confidently showing her muscular arm. Strength and femininity, boldly united. Yet the darkest chapters of history are impossible to ignore. A photograph from 1938-1940 shows a Roma woman pleading as a Nazi officer and official examine her documents, part of the harsh deportations that tore families from their homes and sent them toward unimaginable suffering. In brighter contrast, Chinatown 1980s, New York erupts with energy. Men gather around a massive gong, celebrating community traditions in the middle of the bustling streets, blending ancient culture with the raw urban heartbeat of the era. Then, a softer moment from the 1960s. First-class passengers aboard a luxurious airliner enjoy freshly prepared gourmet meals, glassware, and impeccable service. A time when flying felt glamorous, sophisticated, and almost magical. Back in the 1940s, a smiling young bride poses beside her groom in a modest outdoor wedding photograph, capturing the simple tenderness of wartime marriages, full of hope amidst uncertainty. The early 1900s produced another kind of icon, the first modern bodybuilders. One man stands tall, mustache curled, flexing proudly in classic leopard print trunks, showing off a physique that helped inspire modern fitness culture. Medical treatments weren't always as refined. One strange historical image shows a man strapped into a bizarre contraption meant to fix posture or spinal issues. Suspended by head and arm straps, he undergoes a procedure that today feels more alarming than therapeutic. Shifting to the post. World War II baby boom. Dozens of newborns lie bundled together on a large hospital bed while a nurse cares for them. High birth rates meant crowded nurseries, and this tender scene captures a generation literally at its beginning. Jump to the carefree late 1980s, where three young women stroll confidently through a shopping mall. Oversized graphic tees, denim shorts, and striped tops perfectly capture the colorful, upbeat style of the era, when malls were social hubs and the heart of youth culture. But not all moments of the past were lighthearted. A 1942 photograph shows a desperate woman standing on a building ledge as police officers stretch out of windows trying to save her. A rescue net waits below. The urgency, fear, and determination are frozen in a single gripping instant. We arrive in East Berlin, 1986, 1987, where a group of residents pose in bold, rebellious streetwear, leather jackets, layered clothing, and confident attitudes. Despite political restrictions behind the Iron Curtain, style and self-expression thrived. We move to the late 19th century, where the Zangaki brothers documented life in Egypt. One portrait shows a striking figure holding a spear and shield, standing with confidence and embodying the cultural depth and identity of the region. An image crafted with the photographer's signature dignity and precision. Jump ahead to 1997, a defining moment in technological history, as a world chess champion sits deep in concentration across from a computer opponent. The match reflects humanity's dawning realization that machines could surpass human strategic mastery, a turning point in the rise of artificial intelligence. Travel back to 1942 again inside the bustling production rooms of the New York Times. A worker in a protective visor painstakingly assembles printing plates by hand. In an era before digital printing, every page was built piece by piece, reflecting a craft that demanded skill, precision, and patience. Then journey to Tibet in 1925, where a skeleton dancer dressed in dramatic ceremonial costume performs during a sacred cham ritual. His mask and skeletal body paint symbolize life's impermanence and the triumph of wisdom over fear, a captivating example of Tibetan spiritual tradition. From ancient rituals to futuristic dreams, we visit the imaginative postcards of the year 1900, artists predicting life in the year 2000. One postcard visualizes an advanced ship slicing through stormy seas, embodying the optimism and fantasy with which people imagined the future. Not all moments of the past inspire wonder. Lewis Hines' early 1900s photograph reveals the harsh reality of child labor in America. A young boy's soot-covered face and weary eyes expose the brutal conditions children endured before reforms reshaped labor laws forever. Next, we ride above the river in 1913 Germany on the Wuppertaler Schwebebahn, the world's oldest electric suspended railway. Its futuristic monorail-style design glides through the city, showcasing the bold engineering vision of the early 20th century. In 1982, artist Agnes Deans creates a stunning contrast in Manhattan, a golden wheat field growing at the foot of the World Trade Center. Her land art installation, Wheatfield: A Confrontation, challenges viewers to reflect on environmental priorities in the heart of a global financial Canada. Our journey turns somber as we witness the devastating Great Madras Famine of 1876. Emaciated individuals, their bodies ravaged by starvation, stand together in a heartbreaking photograph that reveals the immense human suffering caused by drought, crop failure, and colonial policies. From tragedy to optimism, we visit the 1939 New York World's Fair, where a visitor stands before the Trilon and the Perisphere, two gleaming monuments representing the world of tomorrow. They reflect a period of hope, innovation, and imagination. Step onto the HMS Daphne in 1868, where enslaved people crowd the deck after being rescued from an Arab slave ship. The British Royal Navy patrolled these waters to end the slave trade, and this photo stands as proof of the unimaginable suffering of those bound in captivity. In 1922, Howard Carter crouches over the sarcophagus of Tutankhamun, carefully examining the young pharaoh's golden mask and ancient artifacts. The discovery of the nearly intact tomb provided unprecedented insight into ancient Egyptian life and became the greatest archaeological find of the century. But history isn't always filled with marvels. In 1948, a shocking photo shows 4 children sitting beneath a sign that reads, "For children for sale." Their mother, overwhelmed by poverty and eviction, felt she had no choice. The image exposed the harsh realities many post-war American families faced. The 1930s bring us to the towering mooring mast of the airship R-101, where passengers prepared to board. Airships were once hailed as the future of long-distance travel, their massive frames floating elegantly through the skies before airplanes eventually replaced them. Into the early days of aviation, watching a Wright brothers aircraft soar overhead between 1902 and 1909. A man on the ground gazes up in awe, witnessing the birth of powered flight, an invention that would soon change the world forever. 1950s and 1960s Afghanistan, we see a different kind of progress. Educated young women in modern attire discussing academic materials. This rare image reflects a once forward-looking era in Afghan history before decades of conflict reshaped the nation. Next, we meet Chief John Smith, believed to have lived from 1784 to 1922, a claimed age of 138 years. His deeply wrinkled face tells a story of resilience and a life-spanning eras of dramatic change. Though debated, oral histories support his legendary longevity. Our journey turns to the open plains of Texas in 1910, where one of the last true cowboys rests beside his horse. As railroads and fences spread across the West, this iconic lifestyle was fading, making images like this a nostalgic glimpse into a dying era. A little girl leans toward a pony, offering a treat with the careful concentration of someone who believes she can change the world through kindness. The simple exchange between child and animal becomes a private ritual, a lesson in tenderness and responsibility, and an instant reminder that wonder often lives where adults see only routine chores. A narrow Paris doorway spills out laughter as a group of kids claim the street for a game, their energy filling the marais with impromptu life. No props, no permission, just raw play that turns ordinary cobbles into kingdoms, and strangers into teammates. In that moment, the whole city is theirs. In a quiet Budapest suburb, a cluster of children rush toward whatever adventure is next. A race, a secret club, an invented mission. Their faces are earnest, their shoes dusty, their plans endless. The photograph captures not the destination but the momentum childhood's unrefined drive toward discovery. A small crowd gathers reverently around a wooden Madonna in a village square, and children stand between faith and curiosity. Their presence at this religious image shows how rituals and traditions fold into childhood, teaching reverence, community, and continuity even as their playful gestures betray an ongoing conversation with wonder. In a close, soft scene simply titled Faith, a child's tentative gaze toward something sacred feels like the beginning of a lifelong conversation with belief. Without pomp or doctrine, innocence and hope are on display the way a child trusts, before knowledge complicates trust, and how that trust shapes the heart. As spring melts the ice in a Moscow stream, a boy launches a toy sailboat and watches it transform the urban runoff into a vast sea. The photograph captures imagination as an engine. A scrap of wood becomes a ship, a puddle becomes an ocean, and a single push is the beginning of many voyages. On a racing day, kids press against the rail at a harness meet, faces lit with the thrill of speed and noise. The scene is less about sportsmanship than about the first taste of competitive electricity. A collective inhale before cheers, where fear and joy mix into a memory that will fuel a dozen future risks. Two children share a single drink at a White House Easter egg roll, an image of quiet generosity in a crowd. Their small gesture of sharing captures the essence of early friendships: trust, fairness, and the simple joy of doing something together, even amid spectacle and ceremony. A boy crouches over a toy pedal car on a suburban sidewalk, oil can in hand, pretending to be a mechanic. He's rehearsing adulthood with grease on his fingers, inventing a future one small, careful fix at a time. The scene is a love letter to curiosity, the kind that becomes careers and keeps hands learning. A child mid-splash in a 1980s mud puddle looks like the entire world has been rewritten by one squelchy step. Mud on clothes, unbothered hair, belly laughs. The photograph celebrates the messy, irreverent joy of being alive, the sort of reckless play adults sometimes long to remember. On a busy Washington street, children cross as streetcars and motorcycles hum past, their small shapes steadier than the city's chaos. The image is a study in composure. In the middle of machinery and noise, kids move through the world with a confidence that says they belong, even when the surroundings are built for grown-ups. A Santa Barbara beach day goes sideways when a seagull dive bombs a child's head. The expression is priceless, stunned indignation that will later turn into a family tale. The photo freezes the comic, chaotic side of outdoor play, a reminder that childhood's best stories often begin with a small disaster and an even bigger laugh. In a crowded New York block, kids form a human ladder, climbing on each other to reach a height or maybe to play. The trust is literal and symbolic, bodies supporting bodies, hands gripping friends. In a city of strangers, childhood invents cooperation and builds improvised structures for both play and survival. A narrow cobbled lane in Greece frames children on the way to school, backpacks slung and feet quick. There is ritual in their stride, the quiet hope threaded through early mornings. The image suggests that learning begins with these small walks, conversations, dreams, and the slow accumulation of a life. A dusty road unfurls into the horizon, and children walk it as if it leads to everything: adventure, towns, mysteries. Their destination is less important than the shared journey. Nowhere becomes the ideal place where imagination has space to grow and plans have room to breathe. Around a simple table in wartime England, children bow heads for a pre-meal prayer, a pause that anchors them amid uncertainty. The photograph is intimate: flickering candlelight, folded hands, a quiet insistence on faith and routine when the outside world is uneven and frightening. A rhythmic game repeats across a line of small bodies, hands clapping, feet skipping. Repetition as ritual and joy. The photo captures how patterns make comfort, how chance and games provide structure for community and identity in the smallest of daily acts. In Liptov's green valleys, kids with dirt under their nails grin at the camera, barefoot and unbothered. Their world may look simple, but their laughter is full and loud, a proof that richness in childhood is often measured in time spent outside and in the freedom to roam. A girl pushes a doll carriage through Vondelpark, tending her make-believe child as if learning care and empathy. The park becomes a stage where she practices future roles, where play is training for life's tenderest responsibilities, and where imagination teaches kindness. On a Balham curb, 4 girls sit with their dolls, swapping secrets and stories with the solemn intensity only children know. The photograph is a snapshot of social apprenticeship, negotiation, coalition, comfort. Their world is small and sacred, and their giggles hold the politics of friendships yet to be fully understood. A solitary swing arcs into the sky in 1977, a child's feet reaching for the sun. The motion is an embodied metaphor for freedom. The back-and-forth rhythm, a cadence for dreaming, daring, and the calm, exhilarating trust that someone will always push the next time you need to fly. A young Sarakatsana girl spins wool, hands fluent in an old craft, eyes steady with concentration. This is a childhood where play and work blur. The continuity of tradition passes through small hands, and responsibility becomes a gentle teacher alongside imagination. Children collect eggs from a coop with careful tenderness, learning the basics of nurture and labor. The photo's quiet light suggests routines that teach patience, care, and accountability. The idea that playfulness and duty can coexist in a childhood shaped by participation. On a Brooklyn fence, kids turn ordinary iron into a jungle gym, balancing and daring each other, inventing games where none existed. The city's rough edges become tools for play, a testament to resourceful joy that carves out space for freedom even in small, crowded neighborhoods. Girls race across a London playground, hair flying, laughter uncontained, a portrait of motion that remembers how physical play shapes confidence. In the swirl of movement, there's a tiny revolution. Bodies learning limits, courage, and the first taste of victory that isn't judged by adults. A boy in Sumiak walks with his dog, the pet's quiet companionship mirroring an unspoken friendship. The photograph is simple and universal. Animals teach children loyalty, routine, and empathy. In a world that can be unpredictable, a dog provides a steady rhythm to which a child can calibrate his days. Two urban kids crouch at a corner like cowboys on a western frontier, toy guns at the ready. Make-believe transforms alleys into epic landscapes. It's a portrait of imagination turning constraints into story. Play that's fierce and inventive, teaching kids to turn ordinary spaces into stages for bravery. In Bellevue, Basel, a cluster of children share a secret or a joke, faces lit with conspiratorial delight. Their closeness is a visual hymn to shared culture, small worlds of trust and discovery that knit communities together, one whispered secret at a time. A goalie crouches low in 1972, eyes fixed on an approaching ball, heart pounding with the importance of the moment. This is the look of first ambition, the taste of responsibility, the thrill of guarding something precious, and the early lessons of failure and triumph that sport offers young hearts. Back in Balham, another street scene captures kids making a neighborhood their playground, alleys as racetracks, drain covers as islands, every step a declaration of ownership over their simpler world. It's an ode to local play and the improvisational spirit that keeps childhood inventive. At Disneyland, a little face is lit by fantasy eyes widening at characters and colors that promise magic. The park freezes the experience of wonder, how a single place can crystallize a child's belief in possibility, fairy tales, and dreams that feel momentarily, wonderfully true. A small boy bottle feeds a piglet, an act of tenderness that complicates the idea of work and play. The frame shows helplessness met with devotion, teaching empathy through hands-on care, and the small but profound responsibility of keeping another life going. A Swiss farm girl scatters feed for her flock, her movements calm and learned, her childhood threaded with chores that teach stewardship. The photo is a reminder that many children learn adulthood through rhythm and task, and that those tasks often become the scaffolding of a generous character. Two little girls embrace with the total seriousness of a promise. Arms wrapped, eyes closed. Their hug says what words cannot. You are seen, you are safe, you matter. The image is pure and unadorned testament to how affection begins early and shapes everything that follows. A group of boys and girls in Budapest cluster around a shared game, a ball, a plan, their faces a collage of concentration and mischief. The frame shows how play builds social skills, how children invent rules and friendships, and how community can grow in a single street.
Back in '69, President Nixon's looking at the Apollo 11 astronauts, but not in the usual way. These moonwalkers just made history, and now they're stuck behind glass like science fair exhibits. Why? Quarantine, baby. NASA wasn't about to risk some alien moon virus taking out Earth. Now rewind to 1937. There's this giant billboard preaching the American way. Smiling family, perfect car, the dream life. But below, a line of folks just trying to get bread. Literally, that photo hit different during the Great Depression. Fast forward to 1945. Emperor Hirohito of Japan meets up with General MacArthur. Talk about a vibe shift. MacArthur towering over him, Japan just surrendered, and the US was moving in. That pic? Cold, silent, loaded with power. 1976 gets real messy. A white teen swings at a black man with an American flag. Yeah, let that sink in. That ain't just violence. That's symbolism gone dark. The whole country was boiling over with tension. Let's take it way back. 1916. A Blackfoot leader, Mountain Chief, is sitting down, singing his people's songs into a clunky metal device. Early recording tech. He was preserving tradition while the world tried to modernize around him. And 1932. There's this dude alone, just standing, hat on, head down, coat too big. Doesn't matter who he is. He became the face of the Great Depression. That photo, it's heartbreak in human form. Now imagine being 6 years old. It's 1960. You're Ruby Bridges, the first black student in an all-white school in New Orleans, walking in, head up, flanked by federal marshals, while the crowd's losing their minds. That girl had more courage than most grown-ups. Let's switch gears. 1954. Marilyn Monroe steps on stage in Korea and boom, instant magic. Troops go nuts. She wasn't just a movie star. She was hope in heels for guys in the middle of a war. Back in 1931, they're building the Empire State Building at breakneck speed. Workers dangling hundreds of feet up like it's no big deal. No safety gear. Just balls of steel and the drive to build something massive during an economic collapse. 1885 rolls in. The Statue of Liberty shows up in parts, unboxing this beast like it's a supersized puzzle from France. America was about to get its most iconic glow-up. In 1967, war's getting real in Vietnam. A U.S. tank commander squints through his scope, eyes locked. That shot doesn't show blood. It shows focus, grit, and the weight of war. 1993, a doctor, John Britton, heads to work with a .357 Magnum under his coat. Not because he's paranoid, but because doing abortions got that dangerous. Chilling. Dude literally had to pack heat to do his job. 1970 in Oakland. Sandra Brown's learning how to handle a shotgun. But this ain't just a training day. It's history in the making. She's the city's first black female cop. Salute. Same year, 1976. Vice President Nelson Rockefeller is riding down the road, sees protesters, and boom, flips them the bird. Yup, the middle finger from the vice president. Now that's what you call unfiltered politics. 1945, the war's over. A sailor grabs a nurse in Times Square and plants the kiss. The moment screams celebration, but it also makes you pause. History's complicated like that. Here's one that'll freeze you. 1926. KKK members on a Ferris wheel. Hooded cowards at a carnival. Hate and horror riding side by side with cotton candy. Still gives chills. 1965, Vietnam. A mother's clutching her kids, waist deep in a river, running from bombs. That image ain't war propaganda. That's real fear, real pain, and a family just trying to stay alive. Back to America. 1934. The SS Morro Castle catches fire off Jersey's coast. Whole ship wrecks. 137 people gone. That photo? Straight up disaster horror movie stuff. Except it was real. 1963. Little JFK Jr. steps forward and salutes his dad's casket. He's just a kid, but the whole nation's heart cracked right there. A tiny gesture that screamed 1,000 words. And finally, 1969. Engineers literally shut down the American side of Niagara Falls, just turned it off to study erosion. What's left behind? A bone-dry riverbed that looked like Mars. Totally surreal. It's 1867. A Native American man stands silently, staring at the newly completed Transcontinental Railroad in Sacramento. That steel beast, it cut through his people's lands, symbolizing progress for some, but deep loss for others. Now buckle up for one of the strangest true stories ever. In 1916, a circus elephant named Murderous Mary was hanged in Tennessee after killing her trainer. Yep, hanged. The public watched in shock as she paid the ultimate price in one of the most controversial moments in animal history. Fast forward to 1977. Inside NASA's workspace, a tech is machining a space shuttle main engine injector with insane precision. This wasn't just metalworking, it was the beginning of space dreams made real. Engineering at its finest. Now let's rewind to 1942. Pilots of the American 8th Bomber Command suit up in bulky, high-altitude gear, strapping on oxygen masks and flight goggles. These guys were flying into war zones at 25,000 feet, breathing thin air and facing death every mission. Speaking of icons, check this out. In 1970, the man who actually modeled as Uncle Sam posed right next to the famous World War I Want You poster. Legendary stuff. He was the face that fueled a generation to enlist. Same year, different vibe. American soldiers training in 1942 practiced the chin pull method to save drowning comrades. Fully geared up, dragging each other through the water, because in combat, survival meant knowing how to pull your brother out. Jump back to 1906. An artist sits amid the smoking ruins of the San Francisco earthquake, calmly painting the wreckage. The city was shattered, but this guy, he turned devastation into canvas. That's powerful. 1935. Hoover Dam under construction, and inside a 45-ton steel pipe? Yeah, there are people standing. It's like something out of a sci-fi flick. That scale, that ambition, pure American engineering grit. Here's a heavy one. In 1919, right in New York City, a massive pyramid made of captured German helmets stood tall, marking the end of World War I. A strange but striking symbol of victory. Now we're heading to space again. It's 1969. Buzz Aldrin stands on the moon's surface during Apollo 11. That pic, not just a flex, it's a first step for all mankind. Speaking of big steps, how about big booms? In 1945, the Trinity nuclear test was snapped just 0.016 seconds after detonation. One photo, and humanity entered the atomic age. 1934. Daredevil acrobats perform right on top of the Empire State Building. No ropes, no nets, just pure guts. Imagine balancing above the clouds in the middle of Manhattan. Here's a haunting one. In 1967, American airman Dewey Wayne Waddell is photographed as a prisoner of war in Vietnam. His face tells the whole story: fear, strength, defiance. 1906 again, this time in the Philippines. U.S. soldiers pose with the bodies of slain Moro insurgents. It's a chilling photo that reveals the dark side of America's overseas military actions. And in 1865, we get a glimpse of justice, or vengeance. Rare photos captured the execution of the Lincoln assassination conspirators. Hooded heads, hanging ropes, history caught mid-breath. 1944, Battle of Eniwetok. A U.S. Marine stares blankly ahead, what we now call the 1,000-yard stare. 2 days of non-stop fighting, and he's seen hell. That photo hits you right in the gut. Let's talk eugenics. Yep, the dark science. In 1925, a family poses proudly outside the eugenics building after winning the Fittest Family Award. A photo that looks innocent, until you know the twisted ideology behind it. 1944 again. This time, an air gunner stands in front of his B-24 bomber. The gear he's wearing? Thick, heavy, and vital. At 25,000 feet, without it, you'd freeze to death. Straight up survival mode. Now flip the vibe to 1980, NYC. The subways were wild. Crime was high, but a group called the Guardian Angels took matters into their own hands. Patrolling trains, red berets on, ready to protect. And finally, the moment that changed everything. 1969. Neil Armstrong. Minutes after stepping foot on the moon. Just standing there, calm, proud, the first man to walk on the moon. And we caught it all on camera. Let's kick it off in 1960. John F. Kennedy's out on the campaign trail, deep in rural West Virginia. And get this, dude's literally standing on a high chair just to get his message across. Not a podium, not a stage, just a kitchen chair and a whole lot of passion. Now flash forward to 1965 in the thick of the Vietnam War. A young American soldier's helmet says it all, scrawled across the front in rough letters: war is hell. No press release, no spin, just truth written in sweat, fear, and survival. things get even wilder in 1914. Some folks thought, hey, let's mount a machine gun on an elephant. Yep, that actually happened. An elephant decked out for war like some prehistoric tank. Not super practical, but 100% real. Back in 1945, just after the war ended, there's this beautiful moment. Actress Marlene Dietrich leaning in to kiss a soldier who just got home. Pure joy, no red carpet, just love, relief, and one hell of a welcome back. Then we hit 1957. NASA's still in its early days. No fancy tech yet, just brains and blackboards. A bunch of scientists standing around a chalkboard jammed with formulas that would one day launch humans into space. Old school genius at its finest. 1992 gives us a photo that's equal parts powerful and heartbreaking. A little kid, fully robed in KKK gear, comes face to face with a black state trooper. And that officer? He kneels down, speaks gently. Hate meets humanity, and humanity doesn't flinch. Now jump way back to 1870. What do we see? A mountain of bison skulls stacked sky high. They were gonna grind them into fertilizer. That's how bad we trashed the land. Millions of majestic animals wiped out, turned into powder. 1884 hits you in the chest. Theodore Roosevelt lost both his mother and his wife on the same damn day. And in his diary, just a big black X and the words, "The light has gone out." Nothing more needed. Then in 1969, Michael Collins, the quiet hero of Apollo 11, takes one of the wildest selfies without even being in it. He snaps Earth, the moon, and the lunar module, meaning everyone alive or dead is in that frame. Except him. Fast forward to the Korean War in 1952. A battle-hardened Marine cradles a tiny kitten in his hands. Surrounded by chaos, he holds on to something soft and fragile. It's one of those moments where your heart just stops for a second. Now let's swing back to the 1930s. Job hunting wasn't online. It was straight-up survival. People walking the streets with signs around their necks, begging for work. The Great Depression didn't just break banks, it broke spirits. 1910? Yeah, child labor was real. Picture a bunch of young newsboys, barely 10 years old, puffing on cigarettes like they're grown men. It wasn't mischief, it was poverty in a pinstripe cap. And then there's 1964. A motel manager pours acid into a swimming pool where black folks were just trying to cool off. Yeah, acid. That image burned into America's conscience during the height of the civil rights struggle. But not all the old photos are horror stories. In 1918, thousands of sailors and soldiers formed these wild, living photographs. Massive human formations shaped like eagles, flags, and patriotic symbols. No drones, just perfect alignment and insane dedication. Now hold up. 1965. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. comes face-to-face with George Lincoln Rockwell, the head of the American Nazi Party. It's hatred versus hope, caught in a single frame. The tension? You could cut it with a knife. Back in 1930s New York, hats were the code. Bowler hats, fedoras, you name it. Look out over any crowd and it's just a sea of classy domes, all dapper and deliberate. 1924 gives us some true Prohibition-era creativity. Moonshiners made these ridiculous shoes shaped like cow hooves to disguise their footprints. Imagine the cops tracking them through the woods and suddenly, boom, cow tracks. Genius or insane? Maybe both. Not all stories end well, though. That same year, 1930, we witnessed one of the darkest moments in American history, the lynching of Thomas Shipp and Abram Smith. A brutal mob, a horrifying photo, and a crowd that's smiling. Yeah, let that sink in. But history's full of contradictions, right? In 1931, the middle of the Great Depression, who opens a soup kitchen? Al Capone, the same guy who ran Chicago with bullets and bribes, feeding thousands not out of love, but for image. Still, people got fed. And finally, 1963. Inside the Capitol Rotunda, JFK's flag-draped coffin lies in state. The man who inspired a generation was gone. And the silence inside that hall? Heavy. History doesn't get louder than that. Back in 1939, believe it or not, American Nazis filled up Madison Square Garden. Yeah, you heard that right. Swastikas hanging under the stars and stripes while a pro-Hitler rally went down in the heart of New York. Straight up eerie. Now let's rewind even further to 1862, when the Iron Beast USS Galena took a nasty beating during the Civil War. Early ironclad ship looked invincible, but that battle damage told a different story. Jump ahead to 1945, and physicist Harold Agnew's just casually strolling around with the plutonium core of the bomb that would level Nagasaki. That little piece of metal changed the world forever. Same year, in a rare moment of brotherhood, Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali are caught cracking up together. Two legends, one frame, smiling before things got complicated. Meanwhile, back in 1942, teenage girls were cranking out World War II propaganda posters like a paint-powered machine. Pure wartime hustle, brush in hand, message on point. After the war ended in 1945, ships packed with American soldiers rolled into New York Harbor. The boys were back, cheers flying, flags waving. That was the moment they knew it was finally over. Then came 1951, Marine boot camp. Not just push-ups and shouting. Nah, hygiene inspections were real. Shaved heads, spotless bodies, ready to serve. But not every moment was celebration. Fast forward to 1991, and there's a haunting image of a dead Iraqi soldier on the highway of death. A brutal retreat frozen in time from the Gulf War. Let's not forget 1865, when General Ambrose Burnside's legendary facial hair gave the world something weirdly wonderful, sideburns. Yeah, we're still rocking his name on our faces. In 1944, two rifles stuck in the sand marked a soldier's final resting place. No gravestone, no fanfare, just pure battlefield respect. Jump to 1961 and things got even weirder. American Nazi leader George Lincoln Rockwell shows up at a Nation of Islam summit. Talk about a twisted political moment. But in 1942, while all that noise was going down, the Flying Tigers, American volunteer pilots, were dogfighting Japanese planes over China. Sky warriors, fearless and sharp. In 1968, James Earl Ray, the man who killed Martin Luther King Jr., was led to his cell in London. No words, just heavy history in a single image. That same year, Captain Paul Tibbets sat inside the Enola Gay, just minutes before flying off to drop the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima. Calm face, historic mission, world-changing flight. Then there's 1944. A Japanese soldier, hands up, surrenders to U.S. Marines on the Marshall Islands. One life spared in a war full of death. Skip to 1965, and a young Marine waits on Da Nang Beach. Boots in the sand, heart probably racing. That was day one of America's boots-on-ground moment in Vietnam. In 1973, a photo called Burst of Joy caught a POW sprinting into his family's arms. Smiles all around. But behind that picture, a marriage that had already fallen apart. The homecoming wasn't so simple. Let's head back to 1943, where 3 American soldiers lie dead on Buna Beach. No filters, no edits. Just the hard truth of the Pacific War, soaked in sand and silence. Also in 1944, a U.S. soldier reaches out to help a woman and her child crawl out of a cave. They'd been hiding from the fight, one hand, one gesture, full of humanity. After General Patton died in 1945, his dog wouldn't leave his side. That photo of the pup lying by his gear, that's love. That's loss. No medals needed. Now shift gears to 1933, and Americans are clinking glasses in celebration. Prohibition was finally over. Bars reopened. Booze was legal again. The dry spell was done. Back in 1945, in a desert in New Mexico, something called Gadget was about to make history. The first atomic bomb, just sitting there, humming with doom. The nuclear age, it started right there. Now here's a twist. Henry Ford, yeah, that Ford, was awarded the Grand Cross by Nazi officials in 1938. Wild, right? A move that sparked controversy then, and still raises eyebrows now. In 1944, deep in Fort Worth, American workers built the B-32 Dominator bomber. Steel, sweat, and speed. This was industrial war power at its peak. And finally, 1946, Bikini Atoll. A 23-kiloton nuclear bomb explodes underwater. Mushroom cloud rises from the sea like a monster. The test? Just the beginning of an atomic arms race that would grip the world. During World War II, Japan pushed out some seriously bold propaganda posters. We're talking bright art, big messages, and straight-up emotional punches. These posters weren't just ink on paper. They were tools to push loyalty, pump up sacrifice, and fuel the war effort. The message? Fight till the end. Die with honor. Never back down. It was mind control, but make it artistic. Now rewind to 1908. Arnold Genthe, an American photographer, captured Japan like a time traveler. His photos showed peaceful street scenes, old-school customs, and everyday life in full vintage vibes. It's like stepping into another world, quiet, simple, deeply human. And speaking of tradition, those old photos from the Meiji era, 1890s to 1910s, they're pure elegance. Geisha and Maiko, dressed head to toe in silk, performing sacred rituals with such grace. It's like watching poetry in motion. Then there's Herbert Getty's famous collection. He didn't just take photos, he hand-colored them. Yeah, back in the 1870s to 1910s, that was a big deal. His shots captured everything. Markets, temples, fishermen, farmers. It's like flipping through a living, breathing history book. But okay, check this out. Between the 1900s and 1950s, Japan had a whole vibe going on with soba noodle delivery. And we're not talking delivery boys with paper bags. These guys balanced stacks, like 30 bowls high, on bicycles, racing through narrow streets without dropping a thing. Talk about talent. That's next-level hustle. Now here's something that flips the script. Ever heard of female samurai? Yup. Between 1850 and 1900, women warriors posed proudly with swords, rocking armor like total badasses. These weren't actors. These were real warriors trained in the art of war, radiating power and pride. Forget everything Hollywood told you. These women were the real deal. And then, boom, 1942. Nobuo Fujita becomes the only Japanese pilot to ever bomb the US mainland. He flew a little seaplane over Oregon, dropped firebombs trying to spark a forest fire. Didn't cause much damage, but it shocked the hell out of America. A wild, bold mission. And yep, it really happened. Fast forward to the end, 1945. Photos from the Japanese surrender aboard the USS Missouri show the weight of the world in one room. Military suits, paperwork, silence. And just like that, the war was over. You can almost hear the sigh of the entire planet. But what came next? The 1950s lit a fire under Japan. Cities grew, industries exploded, people hustled. Photos from that time show a nation rebuilding fast, turning ruins into neon, tradition into tech. That's the heart of modern Japan being born right there. Take post-war West Germany in the 1950s. A nurse touring the country pulled out her Kodachrome camera, and what she captured is wild. Bright colors show families rebuilding, kids running in the streets, shop windows glowing with life again. You can feel the scars of war, but you can also see hope stitched into everyday life. Then the vibe jumps to the 1970s. Couples walked into photo studios dressed like they owned the decade. Flared pants, bold prints, collars so wide they could fly, and hair stacked high. These portraits weren't just about being in love. They were about flexing freedom, confidence, and style that screamed, "This is who we are." School spirit had its own shine too. Vintage shots of cheerleaders show a different era. Longer skirts, simple uniforms, and pure energy in the routines. It wasn't about flashy tricks, it was about pride and raw enthusiasm. The kind of nostalgia that makes you hear the crowd in your head. Not all stories feel lighthearted though. In 1961, Michael Rockefeller disappeared in New Guinea while collecting tribal art. Searches came up empty, no body, no closure. People still argue, did he drown or did something darker happen? His vanishing turned into a mystery that still hangs in the air like smoke. Music history had its own turning points too. Photos of a young Linda Ronstadt show her before she became a legend. just a fresh face with insane talent, natural beauty, and stage presence that couldn't be ignored. You're looking at someone who didn't just sing songs, she shifted the sound of a whole era. Fast forward to 2020, and grocery shopping looks like another planet. Homemade masks tied tight, arrows taped on floors, half-empty shelves. Simple errands felt like survival drills. These images capture how the pandemic didn't just change life, it reshaped the tiniest routines. Back in 1962, people thought they had a grip on the future. A book came out predicting what 1975 might look like. Turns out, some of it was pretty close. Space exploration, automated living, smarter communication. It's crazy to see how the early 60s imagined tomorrow and how much of it actually came true. Hollywood, of course, has its timeless icons. In the 80s and 90s, Michelle Pfeiffer was unstoppable. Photos of her during that stretch show elegance, style, and a magnetism you just can't fake. She wasn't just an actress. She was a standard of what it meant to be unforgettable on screen. You know, flip through old ads though, and you hit a sour note. Women were treated as punchlines, props, or background servants. The sexism is blunt, even cringy, but it's real proof of what they face daily. Those ads weren't just marketing. They were reflections of a culture women had to fight through. Meanwhile, the 1980s had people geeking out over tech that looks clunky now, but felt revolutionary back then. Brick-sized cell phones, clattering computers, cassette players clicking shut. Photos of everyday folks using those gadgets capture a moment where tech was shifting from luxury into daily life. But long before smartphones, people dreamed big. Retrofuturism photos show flying cars, shiny space towers, robots serving dinner. It was optimism splashed in neon, a future that never came but still sparks wonder. A look at how imagination can shape the way people live in the present. The beauty industry had its own flavor of weird. Gadgets from the 1920s to 40s look straight up bizarre now. Metal masks, hair curlers that could pass as torture devices, machines buzzing with promises of perfect skin. It's half fascinating, half creepy, and it makes you wonder what people will think of our routines a century from now. On the opposite end, there are photos of women's faces. Nurses, mothers, workers, soldiers. No filters, no posing, just raw strength. Every look in their eyes tells a story of resilience, sacrifice, and the kind of courage history doesn't always write down, but always needs. Then you hit Italy in the 1980s, and it's nothing but charm. Sunlit piazzas, buzzing cafes, fashion spilling out on every street corner. These photos capture a country living slow, sweet, and stylish. Tradition blended with modern edge, wrapped in pure Mediterranean warmth. Farrah Fawcett owned her time too. Her smile, her hair, her presence. She wasn't just a celebrity, she was a phenomenon. Every picture of her feels bigger than life, like a snapshot of a cultural wave that swept through the 70s and 80s. Cities show a different kind of wave, growth. Photos comparing skylines then versus now are insane. What were once quiet avenues now look like glowing jungles of steel and glass. Old landmarks still hang on, but everything else is in motion, proving cities are living, breathing time machines. The 1990s in Cuba tell another kind of story. Life was tough. Ration lines, shortages, old cars rolling down cracked streets. But the photos also show joy, music, and spirit. Even in struggle, culture thrived, and people found ways to keep moving forward. One shot from 1948 cuts the deepest. A man on his knees outside a Chicago divorce court, begging his wife to forgive him. He's desperate, she's composed, and the world is watching. The photo freezes raw heartbreak, pride, and love crashing in real time. Some women, though, flipped the script entirely. Famous figures stepped out with unshaven armpits, shrugging at beauty standards. It was rebellion, confidence, and freedom rolled into one. The photos feel bold even now, showing that sometimes the most powerful statement is just being yourself. And then there are the monuments in Yugoslavia. Massive, surreal concrete structures built to honor wartime sacrifices. They look like they came from another planet, scattered across mountains and fields. With the nation gone, they stand like abandoned ghosts, strange, beautiful, and haunting reminders of a history that vanished. And who remembers the video store era? The 80s and 90s meant blockbuster nights, neon signs, and walls stacked with VHS boxes. Families made it an event, wandering aisles, debating movie picks, maybe sneaking in some candy. It was simple, it was special, and the photos bring back all that ritualistic weekend magic. Let's talk real inspiration. Terry Fox. This Canadian athlete lost a leg to cancer but refused to quit. In 1980, he launched the Marathon of Hope, running across the country to raise awareness and funds. His determination was insane, and he turned personal pain into a worldwide movement for cancer research. Over in France, things got surreal with the Bogdanov twins. TV personalities turned internet icons. They went through years of extreme plastic surgery, morphing their faces in ways that shocked and fascinated people. From charm to controversy, their transformation became a cultural talking point, a living experiment in fame and reinvention. Now rewind to the toys of the 70s. Hot Wheels tracks, Stretch Armstrong, Barbies, and Star Wars figures. These were the must-have treasures kids begged their parents for. No smartphones, no screens, just pure imagination and joy. The photos throw us back to a simpler time when playtime was everything. Then came the 90s wide-leg jeans. Baggy wasn't just fashion, it was a movement. Skaters, rappers, rebels, all wore them oversized as a symbol of street style and defiance, comfort plus swagger. Photos from back then scream attitude, showing how denim got pushed way beyond traditional fits. On the silver screen, you had Sid Charisse, the Hollywood dancer with elegance and legs literally insured for millions. Vintage photos of her younger years reveal pure beauty and grace, proof of why she lit up musicals and became a timeless golden era icon. And way before memes, there was Joseph Ducrot. This 18th century French painter ditched boring poses and painted himself yawning, smirking, pointing, straight up comedic self-portraits. It broke all the rules of art back then, and today those same paintings fuel internet meme culture. Dude was ahead of his time. Oh, back to Yugoslavia, summer in the 80s. Photos show families packing Adriatic beaches, kids hanging in the streets, and retro fashion everywhere. It's nostalgic, warm, and captures the community vibe before the country broke apart. Bittersweet history wrapped in sunshine. Now brace yourself for 1970s playgrounds. These things were straight up dangerous. Towering metal slides, hard concrete landings, and climbing structures that looked like death traps. But kids loved them. The photos show a mix of thrill and risk, back when playtime meant scrapes, bruises, and real adventure. Speaking of danger, meet the Darvaza gas crater in Turkmenistan. In 1971, scientists lit it on fire to burn off leaking natural gas. They thought it'd die out in weeks. Decades later, it's still blazing. Nicknamed the Door to Hell, the pit glows non-stop, looking like Earth's own eternal fire pit. And finally, let's talk 70s men's hairstyles. Vintage portraits show every look possible. Feathered cuts, sideburns, afros, shaggy rock star locks. Disco vibes mixed with rock influence. It wasn't just hair, it was identity. Those photos capture a fearless decade where style said everything about who you were. Let's kick things off with young Hedy Lamarr. You've seen her as the Hollywood goddess and even heard about her genius inventions. But these rare photos, whole different vibe. Forget the glossy studio glam. This is raw Hedy, natural beauty and individuality shining through way before worldwide fame put her in a box. From Hollywood to the Siberian wilderness, meet the Lykov family. Back in the 1930s, they dipped into the deep forest to dodge religious persecution, then stayed off the grid for 42 years. No cities, no stores, just handmade tools, homegrown food, and sheer determination. When scientists stumbled on them in 1978, the world was blown away by their extreme isolation. Now for something totally unexpected, Apple's 1986 clothing line. Yep, the tech giant tried fashion. Instead of computers, they dropped t-shirts, caps, and neon-colored 80s gear stamped with the Rainbow Apple logo. It was bold, weird, and a total flop at the time. But today, collectors are paying big money for that rare drip. Meanwhile, in the Balkans, moms were practicing an old tradition called Sikanje tattoos. They'd ink their kids, mostly girls, with tiny crosses and geometric marks using soot-based ink and simple tools. It wasn't about looks, it was protection, faith, and cultural identity. Especially during Ottoman times, it was survival ink with meaning. Speaking of the Balkans, let's roll into Yugoslavia's music scene. The 70s and 80s gave us some of the most hilarious, bizarre album covers ever. Wild outfits, awkward props, poses that made no sense. Looking back, they're funny as hell, but they also capture that fearless experimental energy that made the region's pop culture unforgettable. Now switch over to rock stars in tight pants. We're talking 70s and 80s legends strutting on stage in skin-hugging denim and leather. It was fashion, rebellion, and sex appeal rolled into one. Those photos show how something as simple as pants turned into a symbol of rock's wild, no-rules lifestyle. But then we go from loud to eerie, final photos of famous people taken just before their deaths. At first, they look like casual snapshots, but once you know what happens next, they hit way harder. Ordinary moments become haunting time capsules, reminding us how fragile life really is. Now lighten up with some nostalgia. Prom night in the 90s. Picture shiny tuxes, neon dresses, giant hairstyles, and awkward teenage smiles frozen in time. Some of it's cringy, some of it's funny, but all of it's unforgettable. Those photos are pure throwback gold, capturing the awkward charm of growing up in that decade. Next stop, the golden age of surfing. Back in the 50s and 60s, it wasn't just a sport, it was a lifestyle. Wooden boards, sandy beaches, and endless summers. The photos from that era show carefree coastal youth culture, a whole vibe of freedom and ocean energy we still chase today. In 1948, at Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts, these vintage photos capture young women studying in libraries, laughing with friends on the lawn, and carrying on campus traditions. It was a post-war generation, balancing academics, independence, and culture. At a time when opportunities for women were still limited, Smith stood as a place of empowerment, preparing them to step confidently into the world. Decades later, another woman would capture global attention, Florence Griffith Joyner, or FloJo. Known as the fastest woman on Earth, she wasn't just about speed, she was about spectacle. With her bold one-legged racing suits, colorful nails, and unmatched style, she stunned crowds around the globe. These photos prove she redefined not only athletics, but also how the world viewed women in sports, powerful, stylish, and unapologetically themselves. But fashion tells us stories long before FloJo's time. In the early 1900s, swimwear looked very different from today. Vintage photos show wool suits, stockings, and caps. Outfits that weighed heavy in the water. These clothes weren't just about swimming, they were about fitting into society's rigid rules of modesty. Looking back, it's striking how far freedom of style has come in just a century. The lens of history can be harsh too. In 1990, after communism collapsed in Romania, photos reveal the painful truth: empty shops, endless food lines, and crumbling buildings. People who had lived under Ceausescu's regime suddenly face poverty and uncertainty. Yet in their eyes, you can see determination, resilience, and a fragile but real hope for democracy. Not all memories are this heavy. In the 2000s, before high-speed internet took over, LAN parties were the soul of gaming. Imagine friends dragging huge PCs into basements, tangling wires across the floor, and staying up all night fueled by pizza and energy drinks. These photos show a community built on connection, competition, and laughter. Gaming wasn't just online avatars, it was face-to-face friendships. But some images remind us of medicine's darkest missteps. Mid-20th century lobotomies, once promoted as cutting-edge cures for mental illness, left patients subdued, vacant, or broken. Before and after photos reveal personalities erased, lives altered forever. They stand as chilling reminders that science without compassion can do more harm than good. Culture, though, always produces icons, and few were bigger than Pamela Anderson in the late 80s and 90s. These vintage shots trace her rise from modeling to global fame. With her blonde hair, bold style, and Baywatch stardom, she became a symbol of glamour and pop culture. She wasn't just a TV star, she was a cultural phenomenon who defined an entire era. But not every story glitters. Dina Sanichar, found in India in the 19th century, was a feral child raised by wolves. He never fully adapted to human society and never learned to speak. His life was tragic and mysterious, yet unforgettable. Many believe he inspired Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book, a reminder of how reality can shape myth. Fashion circles back again in the 1940s. Teenage girls at the time had a style of their own: pleated skirts, sweaters, and saddle shoes spotted in schoolyards and soda shops. The look was modest, shaped by wartime simplicity, yet carried a youthful energy. These photos capture a generation balancing responsibility with the first sparks of post-war freedom. Now picture Hong Kong in the 1980s. Stunning black and white photos show neon-lit streets, crowded markets, and quiet back alleys. It was a city alive with contrasts, old traditions pressed against rapid modernization. Through these images, you feel both the raw energy of growth and the soul of a community caught between two worlds. And then, the motorcycles. From the 1920s to the 1950s, proud riders posed with their bikes like badges of honor. For some, motorcycles meant freedom. For others, style or status. These vintage photos remind us that the motorcycle wasn't just transportation. It was identity, grit, and glamour, all rolled into one. Meanwhile, in the Maya world around 600 AD, ceramic El Peru figurines told stories of their own. With incredible detail and removable helmets, they weren't just art, they were symbols of belief, ritual, and social order. These artifacts connect us to the Maya's spiritual world, revealing how attire and identity carried meaning far deeper than decoration. History also has its playful side. Imagine people dressed as living Christmas trees, covered head to toe in ornaments, tinsel, and stars. These quirky vintage photos capture an era when holiday spirit went beyond decorations. It turned people themselves into symbols of celebration. Funny, festive, and full of charm. By the 1950s and 60s, hair salons became cultural hubs. Women sat under dryers, flipped through magazines, and shared gossip while stylists perfected curls and bouffants. These photos show that salons weren't just about beauty, they were about belonging. A place where style and community came hand in hand. Then we enter Harlem in the 1970s, through Jack Garofalo's camera. His photos reveal a neighborhood alive with music, fashion, and resilience. Despite struggle and hardship, Harlem carried pride and creativity. Through his lens, you see not just streets, but the soul of a community during a transformative decade. Some stories feel almost mythical, like Chris McCandless, the young man who left society for Alaska's wilderness. His rare photos show solitude, determination, and a haunting beauty. Immortalized in Into the Wild, his journey was one of idealism and tragedy, reminding us of the thin line between freedom and survival. Earlier still, the early 1900s to 1920s saw explorers braving Antarctica's brutal ice. Rare photos show wooden ships trapped in frozen seas, sled dogs pulling supplies, and men enduring unimaginable cold. These images preserve a chapter of human courage at the edge of the world, where survival itself was victory. But not all treasures survived. The Bamiyan Buddha statues of Afghanistan, carved in the 6th century, once stood as towering marvels of art and faith. Destroyed by the Taliban in 2001, the photos now carry their memory. They remind us of both their beauty and the immense cultural loss their destruction caused. History's shadows also reveal the women who stood beside infamous men, dictators, criminals, tyrants. These photos show not just companions, but women woven into the fabric of dark legacies. Some were loyal, some influential, some simply surviving, but all became part of history's darkest chapters. Imagine being forced from your home. Between 1942 and 1944, thousands of Japanese Americans were relocated to internment camps. These haunting photos capture the fear, loss, and resilience of that time. A Japanese kamikaze dive bomber plunges toward a U.S. ship in 1945, frozen in time just seconds before the impact. This moment reveals the desperation and intensity of Japan's final war efforts. In 1945, Emperor Hirohito stood beside General MacArthur for the first time. Their meeting marked Japan's surrender, symbolizing the dramatic shift in power and the end of imperial dominance. Dry and silent, in 1945, Type D Koryu midget submarines sat in Japanese dry docks, ghostly reminders of a last-ditch defense strategy that never had the chance to succeed. Captured in the 1860s, 3 Japanese archers in traditional dress display samurai-era pride. One final glimpse of Japan's ancient warrior culture before modernization and mechanized warfare changed everything forever. In 1945, a group of kamikaze pilots smiled for the camera with a puppy, just one day before flying suicide missions. Behind those smiles hid unimaginable duty, pressure, and fate. The atomic cloud that rose over Nagasaki in 1945 was unlike anything the world had ever seen. An unforgettable image of horror that ended the Pacific War in a single strike. In 1942, Japanese planes dropped leaflets on Allied troops, offering them a ticket to armistice and urging surrender. This psychological warfare aimed to break spirits without firing a single bullet. This time to the late 1800s. You'll find rare colorized photos of the last samurai, real ones, not the Hollywood version. They're standing proud, armor shining, katana in hand. You can feel their spirit, and you can also feel that their era is fading. The 1870s were wild too. Japan stood at a crossroads, old temples next to new trains, kimonos alongside suits and top hats. Photos from this time show a culture trying to hold on while the world rushed forward. And the 1890s? More hand-colored gems from daily life. People working, chilling, shopping. Not flashy stuff, but that's what makes it so powerful. Now, here's a twist that hits deep. Japan's tattoo culture. Photos from 1860 to 1890 reveal intricate, full-body ink, dragons, myths, legends etched into skin. But there's a dark side too. Tattoos were tied to criminals, outlaws, and punishment. So what looks like art was also rebellion. Then came 1923 and devastation. The Great Kanto earthquake hit hard. Photos show collapsed cities, fires raging, people clinging to hope. It's heartbreaking, but it's also a reminder of how strong the human spirit can be. Next stop, World War II's Pacific Theater, between 1942 and 1945. Yo, check this. Black and white snapshots from 1800s Egypt, capturing everyday faces with ancient swag. No filters, no edits. Just raw, real vibes frozen by a legendary lens. Then boom! Switch it up to the 1920s, and we're talking full color. Streets of Egypt bursting with life, the past literally popping off the frame. Like time travel, but make it HD. Slide over to Tunisia in the 1800s. Vintage postcards with that artsy drip, market chaos, cultural flex, and desert life wrapped in watercolor magic. These ain't just pictures, they're full-on time machines. Now hit the desert roads of Petra in southern Jordan. Early 1900s, color photography brings those ancient ruins to life. Golden light, epic silence, straight postcard perfection with explorer vibes all over it. But yo, hold up, it gets heavy. War-torn streets of Lebanon in the late 70s and 80s. Smoking buildings, soldiers in the shadows, and civilians just trying to survive. These images, pure intensity, no cap. Rewind to dusty adventure days. Old school tourists rolling through Egypt, flexing with camels and top hats. Full explorer mode, snapping pics at the pyramids like it's just another vacation. Wild. Zoom into Cairo's buzzing streets in the early 1900s. Street vendors yelling, carts rolling, chaos with a pulse. These shots got texture, man. You can feel the city breathing through them. Out in the desert, Bedouin nomads flex that ancient lifestyle. Tents, camels, tribal gear. No tech, no noise. Just raw tradition, wild freedom, and insane style. This is the real deal. But here's the wildest twist. A vendor in 1865 straight up selling mummies on the street like souvenirs. Yeah, real ancient bodies. History had no chill back then. And just when you think you've seen it all, boom! A military parade turns deadly in '81. Bullets fly, the president drops, and the world watches in shock. These pics, they froze the moment the game changed. Back in '66, Aberfan got rocked hard. Whole town blindsided when a coal tip slid down, burying a school. Straight up heartbreak, man. Wales never saw it coming. Total nightmare. Then there's Rwanda in the 1920s. People were flexing that Amasunzu hairstyle. Wild, sharp, and fly as hell. It wasn't just drip, it was straight up cultural pride. No cap. Now flip to apartheid South Africa. 1950 to 1990. Racist signs were everywhere. Whites only slapped across benches and bathrooms. Total injustice, man. These rare flicks show how cold that world really was. And in 1977, Bokassa went all out in the Central African Empire, rocked a gold throne like a blinged-out Napoleon. Whole vibe screamed dictator energy. Flashy with zero chill. Uganda, 1980. This one hits hard. A starving kid barely standing, and a missionary just standing there. Real raw. The world watched, but help came slow as hell. Congo, 1961. Major Eric Banda got shot twice in an ambush and still lit up a cig like nothing happened. Dude was built different. Straight savage vibes, no lie. Now go way back. 1868, HMS Daphne's deck packed with rescued slaves. After a nightmare ride, freedom finally pulled up. Heavy scene, but real powerful. Between 1870 and 1918, African soldiers were out here rocking German Imperial Army gear, fighting someone else's war with mad loyalty, but got zero respect in return. Straight up wrong. Then there's the darkest of them all, Belgian Congo, 1904. A father staring at his daughter's severed hand and foot. Punishment for not making rubber quota. Straight up evil, man. No mercy. 1954. Mine workers were getting x-rayed just to make sure they didn't swallow diamonds. Like, damn, treated like machines. Greed was king, trust was dead. Jump to 1907. A British sailor's taken off a slave shackle. Big moment. Freedom finally hidden after years of pain. Symbolic as hell, gives you chills. But then it turns savage again. Liberia, 1980. After a coup, cabinet ministers were lined up and executed. No trial, no nothing. Power changed hands like it was nothing but a street fight. From 1959 to 73, the Sydney Opera House wasn't just built, it was forged. Brick by brick, sweat and grind. These old school shots show the crazy hustle behind Australia's most iconic masterpiece. Now flip the page to 1917. Frank Hurley's out on the Western Front, snapping straight-up war nightmares. Trenches, chaos, bodies, and smoke. This ain't just photo, man. They're pure trauma frozen in time. Then we got the thylacine, the last Tasmanian tiger. Between 1910 and 33, a few rare shots were snapped before this wild-looking creature dipped out of existence. Now extinct, but its ghost lives on in these frames. Next stop, 1920s Australia. This vintage mugshot is loaded with gangster energy. Con men, slick hair, shady dames. Real-life crime drama in grainy black and white, total time travel vibes. Jump to 42, deep in the jungle, a Papuan fuzzy wuzzy angel is helping a wounded Aussie soldier. No cap, this moment's all heart, pure courage, carrying a brother through hell. Then there's the gut-wrenching shot from 1943. Leonard Sifley, Aussie soldier, kneeling. Moments before a Japanese sword swings down. One of war's darkest, most haunting frames, etched into history forever. And finally, 1902, Aboriginal men shackled in chains at Wyndham Prison. Colonial Australia's ugly truth, raw and painful. This pic don't just show history, it screams it. Robert Frank's 1950s London street photos. Right, first off, Robert Frank hit the gritty London streets back in the 1950s, snapping raw black and white shots of everyday life. No filters, no fakery. Just proper people doing their thing. It's moody, soulful, and real as it gets. These snaps, pure old school magic. Bangin'. Victorian London in color. Now this one will twist your melon. Victorian London. In color. These restored photos bring the dusty old 1800s right back to life. Cobblestones, corsets, foggy streets. It all pops with proper vibes. Forget what you learn at school. This ain't boring history, mate. This is London in HD before HD was a thing. Life in the Victorian slums. Time to get grimy. These photos take you right into the heart of the Victorian slums. Life was rough. Dirty streets, no space, barely enough to eat. No fairy tales here, just cold nights and endless struggle. You can feel the hardship in these faces. Brutal, raw, honest. Wacky British inventions. All right, brace yourself. These vintage British inventions are absolutely mental. We're talking wearable teapots, umbrella hats, pedal-powered nonsense. It's part genius, part, what on earth were they thinking? But that's British creativity for you, full of eccentric charm and proper weird energy. Love it. Teddy boys and girls in the 1950s. Let's rewind to the 50s. Teddy boys and girls strutting around in sharp suits, creepers, and quiffs. They were proper style icons with a side of attitude. Rebel vibes, rock and roll swagger, and fashion to die for. The original drip, before anyone called it that. Legends. Edwardian women's mugshots. Here's one with a twist. Edwardian women nicked for nicking stuff, now stuck in mugshots looking like vintage supermodels. Petty crimes, but those expressions? Fierce, stylish, and scary all at once. These portraits tell stories without saying a word. Vintage baddies, no question. Rectangular cows in 1800s. Art, right, I'm not making this up. Victorian artists were painting cows that looked like actual rectangles. Blocky bovines with serious box energy. It's like the cows went geometric overnight. Don't ask why, they just did. Bizarre, yep. Brilliant, low-key, yeah. Top-tier weird art. RMS Olympic, Titanic's big sister. Meet the RMS Olympic. Titanic's big sis who actually survived. From 1911 to 1935, she cruised about without the drama. Same glam, less tragedy. These photos show a ship that did her job and dipped. No sinking, no heartbreak, just steady legend status. London's hippie fashion, 1960s. Swingin' London in the 60s? Say no more? Hippies were out here in full technicolor, tie-dye, flares, beads, the lot. Fashion as freedom, rebellion, and pure good vibes. These photos capture that energy where every outfit said, I'm here, I'm weird, and I love it. Street style in London, 1960s. Still in the 60s, in the streets of London looked like a catwalk. Mod suits, miniskirts, Chelsea boots. Everyone was styling without even trying. Retro swag on a different level. These pics, straight drip, mate, if only we still dress like this. The life of Princess Diana. Ah yes, Lady Di. These vintage shots show her whole journey, from quiet royal newbie to international icon. Through the 60s to the 90s, her grace, strength, and proper style lit up the world. She was the people's princess for a reason. Forever missed, forever legendary. Young Queen Elizabeth II. Before she was running the show, young Queen Liz was already holding it down. These photos from the 30s to the 50s show her coming into her own, cool, calm, and queenly. Even before the crown landed on her head, she had the royal vibe locked. The Great Exhibition, 1851. Back in 1851, Britain threw the ultimate flex, the Great Exhibition. Held in the Crystal Palace, it was packed with gadgets, inventions, and wonders from around the globe. A proper Victorian tech fest, mad innovation, big clout. And that building? Absolute stunner. Hop picking in the countryside. Let's head to the countryside. Early 1900s, whole families out picking hops together. No tractors, no machines, just bare hands and teamwork. It's wholesome, it's honest, and it's hard graft. These pics show community, nature, and that quiet hustle life most of us forgot existed. Victorian child criminals. This one's tough. Mug shots of Victorian kids locked up for silly little things like stealing food or shoes. Their faces say it all: pain, fear, survival. They weren't villains, they were hungry. These photos hit hard. History's full of forgotten stories like this. Edwardian beachwear, 1906. Now imagine showing up to the beach in full dress gear: hats, coats, long sleeves. Edwardian beachwear was more like a fashion funeral than fun in the sun. Elegant, sure, but proper stifling. These folks must have been melting out there. Zero chill. Rustic life in Victorian England, 1857. Life in 1857. Rural England was all about simplicity, farming, family, fresh air, no phones, no rush, just hard work and the occasional cuppa. These pics feel like a warm blanket, quiet, calm, and a reminder that slow living still slaps. English lunatic asylum portraits, 1870s. These asylum portraits from the 1870s are proper eerie. Blank stares, heavy silence. Mental health back then was misunderstood and brutal. These weren't monsters. They were just people, forgotten by society. The photos don't lie. They speak volumes, and what they say ain't easy to hear. Victorian women with long hair. These Victorian ladies had hair, like Rapunzel level hair. From the 1860s to 1900s, they never cut it. Just let it grow wild. No trims, no clippers, just patience and pure power. It was a vibe. Elegance meets commitment. Long hair, big energy. Woolsha Londoners in the underground, 1940, 1941. And finally, real resilience. Wayfield 2 era Londoners sleeping on underground platforms while bombs rained down above. Blankets on concrete, babies in arms. These folks were tough as nails. You can feel the fear and the strength in these photos. Pure wartime grit. Heroes, every last one. These rare photographs capture London's vibrant street style during the Edwardian era, between 1905 and 1908. Men in tailored suits, women in elaborate hats and flowing dresses, and bustling cobblestone streets reflect a time of elegance, social change, and the city's unique charm at the dawn of the 20th century. This rare 1964 photograph documents the height of Beatlemania, capturing the frenzy, excitement, and cultural shifts sparked by the Beatles. From screaming crowds to electrifying performances, each image reflects the band's unprecedented global impact, youthful energy, and the way they transformed music, fashion, and pop culture during this unforgettable era. Between 1900 and 1941, in industrial Britain, knockers up were human alarm clocks who woke workers by tapping on windows with sticks or pea shooters. This rare image shows a vanished profession from an era before affordable alarm clocks, reflecting working class life, early shifts in the rhythms of Britain's industrial heartlands. This image chronicled the creation of Concorde, the world's first supersonic passenger jet, from the 1960s to the 1990s. They reveal its groundbreaking Anglo-French engineering, sleek delta wing design, and luxury travel experience, showcasing the ambition, innovation, and prestige that made Concorde an enduring icon of aviation history. This rare 1940 photograph captured the miracle of Dunkirk, when over 300,000 Allied soldiers were rescued from French beaches during World War II. From chaotic evacuations to civilian little ships, braving danger, the images reflect courage, desperation, and unity in one of history's most extraordinary military rescues. Between 1926 and 1938, London's parks used sheep as natural lawnmowers, grazing to keep the grass neatly trimmed. This rare photograph shows flocks wandering iconic green spaces, blending rural tradition with urban life, offering an eco-friendly solution long before modern sustainability trends, and charming passersby in the heart of the city. Between 1914 and 1918, during World War I, Britain's military industry saw a surge of women workers as men left for the front. This rare photograph shows women building munitions, assembling weapons, and running factories, highlighting their crucial role in sustaining the war effort and reshaping gender roles in the workforce. From 1928 to 1983, the Communist Party of Great Britain experienced both growth and decline. This image traces its journey through political rallies, labor strikes, and Cold War tensions, capturing moments of influence, internal struggles, and eventual marginalization, reflecting the shifting political climate and leftist movements in 20th century Britain. This rare 1943 to 1945 photograph showcased London in vivid Dufay color, a pioneering color film process. Captured during World War II, they reveal wartime life in striking detail, from bomb-damaged streets to everyday scenes, offering a rare glimpse of the city's resilience, beauty, and spirit in true color during its darkest years. This 1943 photograph shows the typical weekly food ration for 2 people in wartime Britain. With limited meat, dairy, sugar, and fats, the images highlight the strict rationing system, resourcefulness in cooking, and the government's push for fairness and nutrition during World War II's shortages and supply challenges. In 1868, the HMS Daphne rescued enslaved Africans from illegal slave ships off the East African coast. This photograph shows the freed men, women, and children crowded on deck, capturing both their relief and exhaustion and offering a powerful glimpse into Britain's anti-slavery patrol efforts during the 19th century. This rare 1940 photograph documents the Battle of Britain, the pivotal air campaign where the Royal Air Force defended the UK against relentless German Luftwaffe attacks. From dogfights in the skies to bombed cities below, the images capture courage, destruction, and resilience during one of World War II's defining moments. This 1989 photograph captures the tragic Hillsborough disaster, when overcrowding during an FA Cup semi-final led to a fatal human crush. Fans were pinned against perimeter fences, resulting in 97 deaths and hundreds injured, prompting lasting changes in stadium safety, policing, and crowd control in British football history. This 1940 photograph shows the aftermath of a German air raid on Balham Tube Station during the Blitz. The image reveals a collapsed road, wrecked buses, and flooding from burst water mains, capturing the devastation, chaos, and resilience of Londoners sheltering underground during World War II's relentless bombing campaign. In 1961, Queen Elizabeth II addressed a crowd of over 250,000 during her royal visit to India. This photograph captures the historic moment, showing the Queen engaging with the massive audience, symbolizing post-independence diplomatic ties, pageantry, and the enduring connection between Britain and India in a rapidly changing world. In 1981, 17-year-old Marcus Sargent fired 6 blank shots at Queen Elizabeth II during the Trooping the Colour parade. This photograph captures the shocking moment, the Queen's remarkable composure on horseback, and the swift intervention of security, highlighting a rare breach in royal safety during a high-profile public event. This 1993 photograph shows the aftermath of an IRA truck bomb on Wormwood Street in London. The powerful explosion killed 1 person, injured dozens, and caused massive damage to surrounding buildings, capturing the chaos, destruction, and tense atmosphere during a turbulent period of the Troubles spilling into mainland Britain. This 1920 photograph captures a beggar running beside King George V's royal coach, pleading for help. The striking scene contrasts royal opulence with public hardship, reflecting the deep social inequalities of post-World War I Britain and offering a rare, candid glimpse of desperation against a backdrop of ceremonial grandeur. This 1986 photograph captures the entire British Airways Concorde fleet together in one frame, showcasing the sleek, delta-wing, supersonic jets that symbolize speed and luxury. The image highlights a rare gathering of these engineering marvels, celebrating Britain's aviation pride during the golden age of high-speed commercial air travel. This 1942 photograph shows an RAF pilot receiving a quick haircut between missions during World War II. The candid moment captures the blend of routine and tension on airfields, where brief pauses in combat were filled with simple acts, offering a glimpse of humanity amid the pressures of wartime service. In the late 19th century, Queen Victoria struck up an unlikely friendship with Abdul Karim, an Indian servant who became both her teacher and confidant. Their deep connection defied royal protocol, sparked outrage among courtiers, and fascinated Victorian high society. Rare photographs capture moments of warmth and trust between the two. a cross-cultural bond unlike anything the palace had ever seen. Fast forward to the frozen extremes of 1914, when Ernest Shackleton's Antarctic expedition aboard the Endurance became a legendary survival story. Trapped in ice, the ship was eventually crushed, forcing the crew into a desperate fight against the elements. The photographs left behind are a testament to their unimaginable endurance and ultimate rescue. During the closing years of the First World War, something extraordinary appeared on the seas. Warships painted in dazzling geometric patterns, not to hide, but to confuse the enemy. These bold, dazzled designs bent perception, making it harder for submarines to target them. Archival photographs show how art and warfare collided in a burst of creative strategy. The late 1800s also saw London's Tower Bridge rise over the Thames in a feat of Victorian engineering brilliance. Photographs from its construction reveal its raw steel frame, towering bascules, and Gothic-style turrets taking shape, an inspired marriage of function and grandeur that has since become one of the city's most recognizable landmarks. In 1902, American author Jack London lived among the poorest in London's East End to document their lives. His gritty photographs show crowded streets, weary faces, and a community enduring poverty with remarkable spirit, an unflinching look at a world few outsiders ever saw. Stonehenge, between 1880 and 1960, also underwent its own transformation. Archival photographs track its shift from leaning, weathered stones to the carefully arranged monument we know today. These images chart a story of human intervention, preservation, and the enduring mystery that still surrounds the ancient site. By 1928, rare color photographs offered a more vibrant slice of English life. Factories in motion, children laughing in the streets, and families enjoying picnics. They captured not just faces and places, but the optimism and pace of life between the two world wars. Even in wartime, humor found a way. In 1940, British soldiers manning anti-aircraft guns were photographed in women's clothing, perhaps to lift spirits amid the Blitz. The images reveal that even in Britain's darkest hours, moments of levity and mischief could still shine through. In 1911, the British royal family traveled to India for the Delhi Durbar to mark King George V's coronation as emperor. Grand ceremonies, opulent processions, and tiger hunts in princely states were all captured on film, revealing both the splendor and the contentious colonial traditions of the age. Just after the First World War, the R-33 airship became a source of pride and wonder. Between 1919 and 1925, photographs charted its vast construction, graceful flights, and roll-in experiments and passenger trials, an engineering marvel from Britain's brief age of giant airships. In 1936, Cable Street in London's East End became the front line against fascism. When Oswald Mosley's black shirts tried to march, locals, Jewish, Irish, socialist, and more, joined forces to block their path. Photographs show barricades, police clashes, and the fierce unity of a community refusing to be intimidated. Almost 50 years later, in 1985, an entirely different kind of iconic moment was captured. Princess Diana dancing with John Travolta at a White House gala hosted by President Reagan. Graceful, smiling, and utterly captivating, Diana turned a diplomatic event into an unforgettable pop culture moment. Long before that, between 1873 and 1877, street photographers documented Victorian London in all its grit and charm. Hawkers peddled goods, children darted through narrow alleys, and the city's contrasts, wealth and want, glamour and grime, played out before the lens. Edwardian Britain from 1900 to 1910 recorded another striking image set, mugshots of child criminals, some barely 8 years old. Charged with petty thefts or vandalism, their solemn faces speak volumes about poverty, injustice, and the unforgiving legal system of the time. By 1955, Belfast appeared in rare color photographs alive with post-war energy. Shipyards rang with industry, markets bustled with shoppers, and streets teemed with daily life, offering a rich portrait of Northern Ireland before the shadow of the Troubles. Even fictional legends have a real face. Between 1858 and 1872, photographs captured Alice Little, the inspiration for Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland. From childhood through young adulthood, her portraits offer an intimate look at the muse behind one of the most enduring works of English literature. The First World War also saw thousands of Belgian refugees arrive in Britain between 1914 and 1918. At first welcomed warmly, they soon faced resentment as the war dragged on. Photographs chart both their hopeful beginnings and the harder reality of living as long-term guests in a strange country. Aviation history was nearly cut short for George Aird in 1962, when his Lightning F-1 jet failed mid-flight. Photographs caught the split second he ejected, parachuting dangerously close to power lines, an incredible image of survival in the risky world of test piloting. From 1910 to 1913, Captain Robert Scott's expedition to the South Pole unfolded in front of the camera. The photographs show scientists at work, the icy wastelands they crossed, and the small tents where they made their last stand, a haunting record of bravery and loss. And in 1945, a young Princess Elizabeth donned overalls as a truck mechanic and driver for the Auxiliary Territorial Service. Photographs of her repairing engines and handling heavy vehicles reveal a future queen committed to doing her part in Britain's war effort. These rare photographs capture London's vibrant street style during the Edwardian era, between 1905 and 1908. Men in tailored suits, women in elaborate hats and flowing dresses, and bustling cobblestone streets reflect a time of elegance, social change, and the city's unique charm at the dawn of the 20th century. This rare 1964 photograph documents the height of Beatlemania, capturing the frenzy, excitement, and cultural shifts sparked by the Beatles. From screaming crowds to electrifying performances, each image reflects the band's unprecedented global impact, youthful energy, and the way they transformed music, fashion, and pop culture during this unforgettable era. Between 1900 and 1941, in industrial Britain, knockers up were human alarm clocks who woke workers by tapping on windows with sticks or pea shooters. This rare image shows a vanished profession from an era before affordable alarm clocks, reflecting working-class life, early shifts in the rhythms of Britain's industrial heartlands. This image chronicled the creation of Concorde, the world's first supersonic passenger jet, from the 1960s to the 1990s. They reveal its groundbreaking Anglo-French engineering, sleek delta wing design, and luxury travel experience, showcasing the ambition, innovation, and prestige that made Concorde an enduring icon of aviation history. This rare 1940 photograph captured the miracle of Dunkirk, when over 300,000 Allied soldiers were rescued from French beaches during World War II. From chaotic evacuations to civilian little ships, braving danger, the images reflect courage, desperation, and unity in one of history's most extraordinary military rescues. Between 1926 and 1938, London's parks used sheep as natural lawnmowers, grazing to keep the grass neatly trimmed. This rare photograph shows flocks wandering iconic green spaces, blending rural tradition with urban life, offering an eco-friendly solution long before modern sustainability trends, and charming passers-by in the heart of the city. Between 1914 and 1918, during World War I, Britain's military industry saw a surge of women workers as men left for the front. This rare photograph shows women building munitions, assembling weapons, and running factories, highlighting their crucial role in sustaining the war effort and reshaping gender roles in the workforce. From 1928 to 1983, the Communist Party of Great Britain experienced both growth and decline. This image traces its journey through political rallies, labor strikes, and Cold War tensions, capturing moments of influence, internal struggles, and eventual marginalization, reflecting the shifting political climate and leftist movements in 20th century Britain. This rare 1943 to 1945 photograph showcased London in vivid Dufay color, a pioneering color film process. Captured during World War II, they reveal wartime life in striking detail, from bomb-damaged streets to everyday scenes, offering a rare glimpse of the city's resilience, beauty, and spirit in true color during its darkest years. This 1943 photograph shows the typical weekly food ration for 2 people in wartime Britain. With limited meat, dairy, sugar, and fats, the images highlight the strict rationing system, resourcefulness in cooking, and the government's push for fairness in nutrition during World War II's shortages and supply challenges. In 1868, the HMS Daphne rescued enslaved Africans from illegal slave ships off the East African coast. This photograph shows the freed men, women, and children crowded on deck, capturing both their relief and exhaustion and offering a powerful glimpse into Britain's anti-slavery patrol efforts during the 19th century. This rare 1940 photograph documents the Battle of Britain, the pivotal air campaign where the Royal Air Force defended the UK against relentless German Luftwaffe attacks. From dogfights in the skies to bombed cities below, the images capture courage, destruction, and resilience during one of World War II's defining moments. This 1989 photograph captures the tragic Hillsborough disaster, when overcrowding during an FA Cup semi-final led to a fatal human crush. Fans were pinned against perimeter fences, resulting in 97 deaths and hundreds injured, prompting lasting changes in stadium safety, policing, and crowd control in British football history. This 1940 photograph shows the aftermath of a German air raid on Balham Tube Station during the Blitz. The image reveals a collapsed road, wrecked buses, and flooding from burst water mains, capturing the devastation, chaos, and resilience of Londoners sheltering underground during World War II's relentless bombing campaign. In 1961, Queen Elizabeth II addressed a crowd of over 250,000 during her royal visit to India. This photograph captures the historic moment, showing the Queen engaging with the massive audience, symbolizing post-independence diplomatic ties, pageantry, and the enduring connection between Britain and India in a rapidly changing world. In 1981, 17-year-old Marcus Sargent fired 6 blank shots at Queen Elizabeth II during the Trooping the Colour parade. This photograph captures the shocking moment, the Queen's remarkable composure on horseback, and the swift intervention of security, highlighting a rare breach in royal safety during a high-profile public event. This 1993 photograph shows the aftermath of an IRA truck bomb on Wormwood Street in London. The powerful explosion killed 1 person, injured dozens, and caused massive damage to surrounding buildings, capturing the chaos, destruction, intense atmosphere during a turbulent period of the Troubles spilling into mainland Britain. This 1920 photograph captures a beggar running beside King George V's royal coach, pleading for help. The striking scene contrasts royal opulence with public hardship, reflecting the deep social inequalities of post-World War I Britain and offering a rare, candid glimpse of desperation against a backdrop of ceremonial grandeur. This 1986 photograph captures the entire British Airways Concorde fleet together in one frame, showcasing the sleek delta-wing supersonic jets that symbolize speed and luxury. The image highlights a rare gathering of these engineering marvels, celebrating Britain's aviation pride during the golden age of high-speed commercial air travel. This 1942 photograph shows an RAF pilot receiving a quick haircut between missions during World War II. The candid moment captures the blend of routine and tension on airfields, where brief pauses in combat were filled with simple acts, offering a glimpse of humanity amid the pressures of wartime service.
The summer of 1982, the aircraft carrier HMS Invincible sailed into Portsmouth Harbour to a hero's welcome. The ship had just returned from the South Atlantic after playing a vital role in Britain's hard-fought victory in the Falklands War. Families and well-wishers crowded the docks, waving flags and cheering as the crew, weary from months at sea in freezing conditions, finally stepped ashore. The Invincible was more than just a warship that day. It was a floating symbol of resilience and national pride. In the thick of the Battle of Britain, a rare and surreal scene unfolded in central London. 2 captured German Luftwaffe airmen, likely shot down during a bombing raid, were led under military escort out of a London Underground station. Civilians, unaccustomed to seeing the enemy up close, stared as the prisoners walked past in their flight uniforms. It was a small but striking moment, proof that the battle was being fought not just in the skies, but on the streets of Britain's capital. Long before the era of billionaire owners and all-seater arenas, Highbury Stadium stood as one of English football's most distinctive grounds. In 1951, home fans packed the terraces to watch Arsenal play, surrounded by the Art Deco East and West stands that gave the stadium its unique charm. The post-war years were a golden age for community football, when match days meant camaraderie, cigarette smoke drifting above the crowd, and the roar of thousands rising in unison. A year before the First World War, King George V of Britain and Tsar Nicholas II of Russia posed for a photograph in Berlin, both wearing German military uniforms. The two monarchs were first cousins and bore an uncanny resemblance to each other. In that moment, the three great empires of Europe, Britain, Russia, and Germany, were bound together by family ties. Within 12 months, those same empires would be at war, their rulers on opposing sides. On a summer morning in July 1982, a ceremonial parade of the Queen's household cavalry was making its way through Hyde Park when the IRA detonated a nail bomb. 7 horses were killed instantly, and several soldiers were wounded. The sight of the magnificent black horses lying lifeless on the road shocked the nation. It was a brutal reminder that the Troubles could strike at the very heart of London, even in moments of tradition and pageantry. Amid the devastation of the Blitz, a photographer captured a scene that came to embody the British wartime spirit. A milkman, calmly delivering bottles along a street reduced to rubble by German bombs. His route had not changed, even though the buildings around him had been torn apart. The image told the world that in Britain, daily life would carry on bombs or no bombs. Trooping the colour is one of the most precise and disciplined ceremonies in the royal calendar. But in 1970, as Queen Elizabeth II rode past on horseback, a guard of honour collapsed in full view of the crowd. The heat was intense, and the soldiers had been standing motionless for hours. The fainting guard became a humanizing moment in a sea of perfect pageantry. When Japan surrendered in August 1945, British prisoners of war in Singapore were finally freed after years in brutal prison camps. Photographs of their release showed men so thin, their uniforms hung loosely from their skeletal frames. Many had endured starvation, disease, and forced labor on projects like the Burma Railway. Their faces told the story of survival against the odds and the heavy cost of captivity. A year after the Falklands War, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher flew to the islands to meet residents and troops. Walking through the windswept settlements, she was greeted as the leader who had defended their home. The visit reinforced her Iron Lady image, showing the world she was as unyielding in victory as she had been in battle. In the mud-soaked trenches of the First World War, endless artillery bombardment could break even the strongest minds. A haunting 1916 photograph shows a soldier with a blank, faraway stare, a man physically present but mentally shattered. Known then as shell shock and now as PTSD, it was one of the war's invisible wounds. During the Troubles, women were not just bystanders, some took up arms. A striking photograph from Belfast shows a young female IRA fighter holding a rifle in the middle of a tense urban street. Her presence challenged traditional views of gender roles and reflected the deep involvement of women in the conflict. Bomb disposal during the Troubles in Northern Ireland was one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. In one tense image, a British Army specialist walks alone toward a suspect car in Belfast. Clad in protective gear, he faces the possibility that at any moment the vehicle could explode. Outside Lord's Cricket Ground in 1937, a photographer captured 2 public school boys in immaculate blazers standing beside 3 working-class lads in worn clothes. The contrast was stark, a visual summary of Britain's class divide on the eve of World War II. The Blitz left vast swathes of London in ruins. In one image, civilians picked their way through smoking debris, searching for anything salvageable. It's a portrait of a city battered but unbroken, its people refusing to bow to the Luftwaffe's destruction. During an inspection near Hartlepool in 1940, Winston Churchill was photographed holding a Thompson submachine gun. The image was meant to project strength and defiance in Britain's darkest hour. Some saw it as rousing propaganda, others as pure theatre. As the war neared its end, Germany unleashed the V-1 flying bomb. A photograph captures one in mid-air, seconds before impact in central London. Its distinctive buzzing drone gave civilians just enough warning to run, but often not enough to survive. Fearing chemical attacks, British hospitals in 1940 tested sealed gas masks for infants. Parents were shown how to place their baby inside the contraption and pump in clean air. The unsettling image shows the extreme lengths people went to protect their children during wartime. In 1919, the surrendered German submarine U-118 washed up on Hastings Beach. Locals flocked to see the massive war machine that had once prowled the seas, now lying powerless in the sand, a silent trophy of victory. Before he was Britain's wartime Prime Minister, Winston Churchill was a young soldier and war correspondent. Rare photographs from the 1890s show him already displaying the ambition and restless energy that would define his career. In one of the most heartbreaking images of the war, a small boy stands clutching a stuffed animal amid the ruins of a bombing in London. His home is gone, his family perhaps missing, yet he holds on to the one piece of comfort left to him.
In the 1960s, Toronto was alive with change. Photos from this era show ordinary people on busy streets, shifting fashions, in a city embracing modern culture. It was a time of transformation, captured forever in black and white. Go back another decade, and Montreal in the 1950s comes to life. Bustling markets, vintage cars, and the unmistakable energy of a city finding its identity after the war. The photo almost feels like you can hear the noise of the streets. Further west, vintage photo of Vancouver's Stanley Park between 1900 and 1930 reveal a natural paradise. Early visitors wandering trails, quiet lakes, and the wild beauty that made it one of Canada's most iconic landmarks. Toronto in the early 1900s looks almost unrecognizable today. Horse-drawn carriages on dirt roads, brick buildings rising, people wrapped in heavy coats. Each image pulls you into the heartbeat of a city on the edge of modernity. But not all of Canada's past was peaceful. In 1917, Halifax was ripped apart by a devastating naval accident. Two ships collided, one carrying explosives. The blast erased much of the city and claimed thousands of lives, a wound that never truly healed. Meanwhile, in Vancouver, between 1890 and 1910, photograph shows brave visitors crossing the Capilano Suspension Bridge. Just a narrow walkway over a dizzying drop, surrounded by wilderness. It was the ultimate adventure long before it became a tourist attraction. Some photos reveal injustice. In 1914, the Komagata Maru arrived in Vancouver with hopeful Indian immigrants. Canada turned them away under racist immigration laws. That moment exposed deep discrimination and sparked outrage that still echoes in history. Then there are the rare portraits by Harry Pollard, intimate photograph of Canada's First Nations people. Traditional clothing, daily life, and proud heritage preserved in timeless frames, giving us a window into Indigenous culture at the start of the 20th century. On the rugged coast of British Columbia, lumberjacks of the early 1900s posed beside giant felled trees, the size of small houses. The sheer scale of logging and the grit of these men showed the backbone of Canada's booming timber industry. But history isn't just about work and hardship, it's also about resilience. In Korea 1952, Canadian soldiers built their own ice rink and played hockey. Skating in the shadow of war, they found comfort in the most Canadian way possible. Yet war's reality was never far away. A photograph of Private Heath Matthews, wounded and waiting for medical care after a raid, captures the exhaustion and sacrifice that defined countless soldiers' lives. One of the most emotional images in Canadian history is from 1940. A little boy reaching for his father as soldiers marched off to war. The photograph, titled "Wait for Me, Daddy," became a symbol of family sacrifice and the heavy price of World War II. And finally, in 1967, French President Charles de Gaulle stood on a Montreal balcony and shouted, "Vive le Québec libre! Long live free Quebec!" That single moment, captured in a photograph, ignited political tension, fueled Quebec's independence movement, and forever changed Canada's identity. Imagine prisoners shackled with massive wooden boards locked around their necks. These weren't just chains, they were kangyus, designed to humiliate. You couldn't lie down, you could barely eat, and every step was a public parade of shame. It's raw proof of just how unforgiving justice used to be. Now, let's move into the neon-lit streets of Shanghai in the late 1940s. The city was buzzing with dive bars, English signs, refugees hustling, and a street life that felt electric and chaotic. Jack Burns' camera captured it all, a last glimpse before Shanghai flipped into a whole new era under communist rule. But rewind further, back to the Qing dynasty. Here, portraits of merchants, nobles, and workers were carefully staged, then hand-tinted with color. They looked theatrical, almost like living postcards made for tourists. Still, behind the painted smiles and stiff poses, you can sense the lives of real people who walked China's streets more than a century ago. Fast forward to the 1950s, where propaganda took center stage. Bold Chinese Soviet posters showed workers flexing, fists raised, heroes larger than life. The intent was power. But some of them? Well, let's just say they accidentally gave off more Jim Bro bromance than revolutionary strength. Awkward, but unforgettable. And while propaganda filled the walls, real life was exploding in Hong Kong. The 1950s saw color photographs of jam-packed streets, endless crowds of newcomers, and brand new housing towers sprouting after devastating fires. You can almost feel the hustle, Hong Kong clawing its way into becoming one of the biggest trade hubs on Earth. But nothing compared to the storm of the Cultural Revolution. Red posters screamed slogans, kids held Mao's Little Red Book high, churches closed, traditions were crushed. Every wall carried the fever of revolution. Looking at these images, you can feel an entire country caught up in a tidal wave of ideology. And yet not too long before that, Beijing was still living in the quiet rhythm of the 1800s. Photographer Thomas Child captured ancient bridges, pagodas, wedding chairs, even street markets that look frozen in dust and light. These old photos feel like time travel postcards, a Beijing untouched by the chaos that was coming. Then comes 1989, Tiananmen Square. Students holding banners, hunger strikers lying weak, flames in the background, and tanks rolling forward. The images are heavy, the kind that stick with you long after you look away. They capture raw courage, raw tragedy, a fight for freedom carved into history. But war and identity struggles weren't just in China. During World War II in America, Chinese immigrants wore signs that read, "I'm Chinese," terrified of being mistaken for Japanese Americans who were hated and thrown into camps. The desperation in those photos is chilling. Identity itself became a shield for survival. Rewind again to 1900, during the Boxer Rebellion. Soldiers from 8 nations, Britain, America, Japan, Germany, and more, line up for a propaganda shot. It looks almost like a military fashion show, but what it really was domination. Foreign powers flexing muscle in China's backyard. By the 1970s, all eyes were on one man, Mao Zedong. His final public appearance in 1976 shows him frail, barely able to stand, yet still greeting Pakistan's Prime Minister Bhutto. The photo feels like a curtain call, the last bow of a man who once commanded absolute power. And then one of the most heartbreaking images ever taken. Shanghai, 1937. Japanese planes bombed a train station, leaving devastation everywhere. In the rubble, one baby sat crying alone. That single shot, Bloody Saturday, became a global symbol of innocence destroyed by war. It shook the world, and it still does. The early 1990s hit Cuba like a storm. The Soviet Union collapsed, and with it went Cuba's lifeline. Suddenly, people were cooking in blackouts. Shelves went bare, fuel vanished. But Cubans, they fought back with creativity. Bikes replaced buses. Rooftops grew vegetables. Kids studied under candlelight, and doctors improvised with scraps. Life was brutal, but somehow the spirit never broke. Now rewind. Before he was the cigar-waving revolutionary, Fidel Castro was a straight-up sports junkie. At university, he smashed track records, jumped like an Olympian, and later he couldn't stay off the basketball court. It's wild to imagine him, not behind a podium, but sinking shots and running plays. Then came 1959. Castro in America was like a celebrity world tour. Picture him kissing beauty queens, devouring New York hot dogs, jamming himself onto the Bronx Zoo train with school kids, and signing autographs like a Hollywood star. For a moment, America wasn't just curious, they were charmed. But Havana itself has always been the real star. Around 1900, the streets pulsed with life, horse-drawn carriages rattling over cobblestones, fruit sellers shouting prices, ice cream carts jingling through palm-lined plazas. And out in the harbor, the wreck of the USS Maine sat like a ghost, reminding everyone of wars and shifting empires. By the 1940s and 50s, Havana was pure electricity. Casinos glowed through the night, Roomba dancers turned clubs into firestorms, mob bosses rolled dice beside debutantes sipping champagne. It was Vegas with palm trees and salsa beats, where the rich lived big while cane cutters outside the city lived hard. And then the world held its breath. The Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 put the entire planet on edge. Spy planes caught Soviet nukes on Cuban soil. Kennedy went on TV calling their bluff. Ships steamed toward blockades, and Florida soldiers loaded rifles, waiting for the unthinkable. For 13 days, nuclear war sat on the table, and Cuba was dead center. So here's the scene. 1959, fresh-faced Fidel Castro rolls up to Washington, D.C., rocking his green fatigues like he owns the place. Dude strolls the Lincoln Memorial steps, looking half tourist, half revolutionary boss. Kinda wild seeing him vibe with Honest Abe before the Cold War heat turned up. Castro's out here in '63, flexing hard, cigar puffing, rocking 2 Rolexes like he's got time zones to burn, chilling next to Soviet boss Khrushchev. The vibe screams power move. I'm the man, I run on my own clock. Straight up Cold War drip mixed with tropical swagger. Castro and Khrushchev in '63, looking like bros on a wild college trip, clinking a giant drinking horn full of wine in Georgia. No suits, no stiff politics, just big laughs and heavy pours. 2 Cold War bosses bonding over booze, flexing friendship like it's the ultimate power toast. Wedding photos from that decade are full of bold fashion and big hair. Puffy sleeves, lace gowns, pastel tuxedos, and extravagant hairstyles ruled the day. But it wasn't just about style. It was about capturing the joy, the laughter, and the family bonds. These pictures remind us that while trends change, the spirit of love never goes out of fashion. Speaking of royalty, rare photos of Princess Victoria Louise, the only daughter of Kaiser Wilhelm II, take us back to early 20th century Germany. She wasn't just another royal figure. She was Germany's last imperial princess before the monarchy fell. Her portraits, from her grand 1913 wedding to quieter moments, reveal elegance, grace, and a life caught between tradition and history's turning point. Jumping ahead to the 1970s and 80s, nothing screams freedom like Volkswagen vans. These iconic rides became the symbol of adventure and counterculture. Families hit the road, friends camped by the beach, and wanderers embraced a lifestyle of community and creativity. Looking at these photos today, you don't just see vans, you see the spirit of an entire generation chasing the open road. Then we find something by pure chance, forgotten photos of young women's fashion from the late 1980s and early 1990s. Oversized jackets, bold prints, denim everywhere, scrunchies, and statement jewelry. These weren't just outfits, they were identities. Each candid snapshot is a reminder of how style has always been a language of confidence and creativity. But history isn't only about style. In the early 1900s, knife grinders in France worked lying flat on their stomachs while sharpening blades. This odd position spared their backs, but it came with chest strain and long-term health risks. Old photos of these workers capture not just a lost trade, but the resilience of laborers who literally laid down their bodies for their craft. Medicine was transforming at the same time. Dr. Harvey Cushing, often called the father of modern neurosurgery, photographed his brain surgery patients in the early 20th century. These haunting portraits show scars, trauma, and vulnerability, but also survival. They're not just medical records. They're powerful reminders of the human will to endure during the earliest days of brain surgery. And then we swing to something much lighter, nostalgic snapshots of Dr. Pepper's golden years. Vintage ads, happy families, and young people sipping from glass bottles capture a time when soda wasn't just a drink, it was part of American tradition. These images remind us how something as simple as a fizzy drink can weave itself into culture. Fashion also brought scandal. In 1907, swimmer Annette Kellerman was arrested for daring to wear a one-piece swimsuit. Her portraits, equal parts elegance and defiance, challenged society's restrictive norms. What was once shocking became the foundation of modern swimwear, blending athletic freedom with early feminist courage. By the 1980s, the spotlight was on rising stars like Demi Moore. Photos from her early years capture her edgy fashion, youthful charm, and undeniable presence. Looking back, you can see her transformation, each frame hinting at the stardom she was destined to achieve. But not all trends were about Hollywood. The 1960s and 70s gave us the era of the go-go boots. Women rocked them with mini skirts and bold outfits, striding with confidence and style. Vintage photos show that these weren't just boots, they were a symbol of liberation and the fearless fashion revolution of the time. Let's kick things off with energy. Early 1900s amateur sports. Imagine it. Dusty fields, neighbors in simple uniforms, no sponsors or TV cameras. People played for joy, for community, for that pure rush of the game. The photos show laughter mid-stride, determination on faces, kids watching from the sidelines. Back then, sports weren't about million-dollar contracts. They were about play. And honestly, you can feel that vibe through the images. Now shift from playgrounds to the world's greatest treasure hunts. Archaeology has given us some jaw-dropping discoveries. Tombs sealed for thousands of years, golden masks buried with kings, entire lost cities swallowed by time. Each photo of these finds feels like opening a door to another world. They're not just artifacts, they're keys to understanding who we are, how we lived, and what we believed. Every discovery is basically a plot twist in humanity's story. But not all history is buried. Some of it simply faded away. Think about jobs that don't exist anymore. Lamplighters walking the streets at night, climbing poles to light the way, switchboard operators plugging cords to connect phone calls, town criers yelling the news before newspapers were common. These were normal gigs, essential even, but now they're gone. Old portraits of these workers feel like time machines. They remind us just how much technology and progress reshape daily life. And then, cinema. Behind the scenes of Metropolis in 1927, you'll see crews building massive futuristic sets, workers adjusting strange robotic costumes, cameras capturing angles no one had tried before. This was decades before CGI. Every effect was handmade, every illusion carefully built. Those photos show not just a film being made, but an entire vision of the future being born on set. Fast forward to the 1980s, where the future looked a little different. This time through hairstyles. And when I say big, I mean skyscraper big. Teased, sprayed, and towering above the head, the hair wasn't just a style. It was a statement. These photos scream confidence, rebellion, and I'm here, deal with it. Looking at them now, you realize the 80s wasn't subtle about anything, least of all hair. Let's rewind again to Paris, 1908. Meet Madame Inés de Courcelles, one of the first women to ever drive a taxi. In a city full of men behind the wheel, she carved her own lane, literally. Her portraits aren't just pictures of a driver. They're snapshots of courage and independence at a time when society didn't expect women to take that role. Every mile she drove was history in motion. And now, something more haunting. Victorian widows in mourning. Photos from the 1870s to early 1900s show women dressed head to toe in heavy black gowns, faces hidden by veils, expressions locked in sorrow. It was more than grief, it was ritual. Mourning was strict, detailed, and even fashionable. These portraits carry a strange mix of elegance and eeriness, as if sorrow itself had a uniform. But history isn't always heavy. Sometimes it's just quirky, like milk deliveries in the early 20th century, done with dog-drawn carts. Yeah, real dogs pulling small wagons filled with glass bottles. The photos are equal parts charming and practical. It's one of those things that makes you think, wow, life really did run differently back then. Now to a giant, literally. King Kong, 1933. Behind-the-scenes shots show stop-motion models being carefully moved frame by frame, miniatures standing in for skyscrapers, and actors staring at empty spaces where the ape would later be added. These photos remind us just how much patience, creativity, and straight-up grit went into making one of Hollywood's first monster icons. And finally, the Halbstarken youth of 1950s and 60s Germany. Bold hair, leather jackets, cigarettes dangling, and an attitude that screamed, "We don't care." These weren't just kids, they were a movement. A pushback against strict traditions, fueled by rock and roll. Their portraits capture raw rebellion, the spirit of a generation refusing to play by the old rules. Take the lost stadium of Magnesia, an ancient Greek arena once buried under earth. Before and after excavation photos show its transformation from forgotten rubble to a restored monument. It's like watching time peel back, giving us a direct glimpse into where ancient athletes once competed. Of course, human bonds never fade, like the sweet photos of people and their cats from over 110 years ago. Whether it's a child hugging a kitten or adults posing with their feline companions, these moments prove that our love for pets is timeless. Cinema had its magic too. Behind-the-scenes photos from the 1984 classic, The Terminator, show Arnold Schwarzenegger turning into one of the most iconic characters in sci-fi history. From makeup chairs to explosive stunts, the raw production shots reveal how much grit and teamwork went into bringing a legend to life. Meanwhile, teenager bedrooms in the 1980s were their own universe. Posters plastered on walls, cassette players blaring music, neon decor, and piles of magazines. These spaces were shrines to identity and self-expression. Looking back, they perfectly capture what it meant to grow up in that unforgettable decade. Film history goes even further back with Safety Last, starring Harold Lloyd. Behind-the-scenes photos reveal how one of cinema's most daring stunts, the famous clock hanging scene, was pulled off. These images showcase creativity, clever set designs, and the raw courage of silent-era filmmaking. Technology had its quirky moments too. In 1966, England unveiled Tinker the Robot, a so-called housekeeping machine. Though limited in function, photos of Tinker attempting chores capture the playful optimism of the time, a vision of the future that hinted at the robotics revolution we live with today. On the softer side, snapshots of Victorian children from the 1890s and 1900s show them proudly holding dolls, teddy bears, and wooden toys. These portraits aren't just adorable. They reveal the social values and simple joys of childhood over a century ago. The 1970s brought a different kind of fun. The van customization craze. Old photos reveal vans transformed into rolling art pieces with wild murals, shag carpeting, and bold interiors. They weren't just vehicles, they were mobile expressions of freedom and creativity. Not all photos age gracefully, though. Studio portraits from the 1980s and 90s often mix glamour with awkward charm. Big hair, glittery outfits, dramatic poses, and cheesy backdrops. What felt stylish then now feels hilariously nostalgic, reminding us how trends always come full circle. Sports photography also tells its story. Early 20th century images of amateur athletes capture the pure joy of competition, local races, casual games, and the camaraderie that came with it. These aren't just athletes frozen in motion, they're people celebrating health, friendship, and the thrill of play in its simplest form. Let's start with the faces of 1870s Egypt, taken by French photographer Émile Bichard. His portraits show everyday Egyptians, farmers, traders, and families, captured in their cultural attire. These photos aren't just portraits. They're windows into the identity, traditions, and charm of a country finding its place in a rapidly changing world. Fast forward a couple of decades, and we step into the stylish 1890s, where women's fashion ruled with elegance. Elaborate gowns, corsets, and fine accessories defined beauty and sophistication. These photos remind us how fashion wasn't just clothing. It was status, culture, and expression. But style never stands still. In fact, some groovy photos from history bring back wild trends that might just inspire your wardrobe today. They celebrate individuality, bold choices, and that fearless attitude of expressing yourself, proving that vintage looks will always remain timeless. Not every old photo is glamorous, though. Some fall into the bizarre. Bizarre historical photos capture strange inventions, unusual customs, and odd moments that make you stop and wonder. What were they thinking? But it's that weirdness that makes history so human and so fascinating. Jump ahead to the 1980s, and we're looking at men's hairstyles that were nothing short of iconic. Mullets, perms, slickbacks, and spikes. The 80s were about confidence and standing out. These photos aren't just about hair, they're about a cultural vibe that's still celebrated today. Now, imagine stepping into Jerusalem at the turn of the 20th century. Rare photographs show its ancient streets, bustling markets, and sacred landmarks. Each snapshot carries the weight of centuries of faith, culture, and community, frozen in a moment when modern life was just beginning to reshape the Holy City. Across the sea, Victorian London in color photos brings the 19th century to life in a way black and white never could. You see the busy streets, the fashions, and the architecture in vibrant tones, making you feel like you've traveled back in time to walk alongside Londoners of the past. But history goes back much further than that. Ancient fashion reveals the oldest clothes and accessories humans ever made, from simple woven fabrics and preserved shoes to jewelry crafted from shells and bones. These discoveries prove that even in prehistoric times, people cared about expression, identity, and style. Of course, not all stories are uplifting. Some are heartbreaking, like the story of the radium girls in the early 20th century. Young women painting watch dials with glowing radium were told it was safe. They even ingested it while working. But the radiation slowly poisoned them, leaving a legacy of pain that forced the world to rethink workplace safety forever. And finally, we arrive in Budapest between 1939 and 1944. Color photographs from this time reveal families, markets, and daily routines during one of history's darkest chapters, World War II. These images capture a striking contrast, ordinary life unfolding against the looming shadow of war, showing resilience in the face of hardship. The Azorean hood was a unique traditional attire worn by Portuguese women from the Azores, especially in the 19th and early 20th centuries. These hooded capes, called capote e capello, were large, voluminous garments that offered modesty, protection, and style. Vintage photos capture their cultural elegance and timeless beauty. The weddings of the 1970s reflected the free-spirited vibe of the decade, blending tradition with bold fashion choices. Brides often wore flowing gowns, lace details, and flower crowns, while grooms embraced wide collars and flared pants. Vintage photos from this era showcase love, joy, and the groovy charm of 70s celebrations. Flappers of the 1920s redefined fashion and freedom with their bold style and attitude. Short dresses, bobbed hair, cloche hats, and long pearl necklaces became their signature. Vintage photos capture these women dancing, smoking, and enjoying nightlife, symbolizing rebellion, independence, and the roaring spirit of the Jazz Age. Before rising to power, Adolf Hitler pursued art, creating paintings and sketches of buildings, landscapes, and everyday scenes. Though technically skilled, his work lacked originality and emotional depth. These rare artworks, seen in vintage collections, reveal a different side of history, offering a glimpse into the troubled mind behind World War II. Long before digital machines, human computers were women who performed complex calculations by hand for science, engineering, and space exploration. In the early 20th century, they worked tirelessly on astronomical data, ballistics, and NASA missions. Vintage photos honor these brilliant women whose precision and dedication laid the foundation for modern technology. The 1920s brought a shift toward relaxed yet stylish clothing, breaking away from stiff Victorian norms. Men favored tailored suits with casual touches, while women embraced shorter hemlines, loose silhouettes, and chic accessories. Vintage photos highlight this balance of comfort and elegance, capturing an era where fashion mirrored social change and freedom. In 1964, Heineken introduced the Wobo bottle, designed to double as a brick for building homes after use. The idea aimed to reduce waste and address housing shortages. Vintage photos of these rectangular beer bottles showcase an innovative blend of sustainability, practicality, and design that was far ahead of its time. In the 1870s, French photographer Émile Bichard captured striking portraits of Egyptian life, from everyday people to cultural scenes. His photos reveal the clothing, traditions, and character of Egypt during a time of transition. These rare images preserve history, offering a vivid glimpse into 19th century Egyptian identity and society. The 1890s marked an era of sophistication in women's fashion, with high-neck blouses, puffed sleeves, corseted waists, and elaborate hats. Vintage photos showcase women embracing elegance and refinement, reflecting both societal expectations and personal style. These glamorous images capture the grace and poise that defined late 19th century fashion trends. These groovy photos take us back to moments when fashion and attitude defined entire generations. From bold prints and flared pants to retro hairstyles and carefree vibes, each image reflects a spirit of confidence and creativity. This glamour flashback shows how timeless style from the past continues to inspire today's trends. So when we look back at these vintage photos, we're not just admiring outfits or faces. We're stepping into history, feeling the spirit of each era, and seeing how much of it still lives on in the way we think, dress, and create today. If you enjoyed this journey through time, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more amazing stories from history brought to life through vintage photos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.